I entertain a motion to approve the records of the meeting of January 7th, 2020.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Ms. Ravad, would you please read notice of the first public hearing for this evening?
Public hearing relative to the application to amend Class 2 license held by 97 Emery Street LLC, located at 97 Emery Street, with 7 customer spaces and 30 display spaces.
Is there anybody here to speak in favor? Anybody here? Please come to the podium. Good evening.
Good evening, ma'am.
Would you state your name and your home address, please?
Sure. Asra Nausheen Kader, home address 2 April Lane, apartment 33, Lexington, Massachusetts.
Thank you. And you want to speak in favor of the license?
Yes, so this is a new startup business, so we've been amended for more space, and we want to do our due diligence in order to get the right customer parking and right spaces to get the license.
And you did submit a new site plan, is that correct?
I did.
Okay. Counselor Dolan, any questions?
No, I appreciate everything that you've done. She initially had it for the 12 spaces, which is what the business before had, so she just kind of went along with the same plan, but they have plenty of space
Sure
there.
do.
And, you know, you've been great and everything, and, you know, I don't have any issues or anything. I just ask that once, you know, if we approve this, if you could just stick with what you have.
Absolutely.
So if you're allowed 30, then
Absolutely.
because I drive by there like all the time.
Absolutely.
But thank you for being so cooperative and doing everything that we asked you to do. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And Sharon was also great helping to us.
Yes,
Thank you.
she is. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with any questions, comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else here to speak in favor? Anyone here to speak against? Anybody here to speak against? Anybody here to speak neither for nor against? With that, Counselor Dolan, would you like to close this public hearing?
Yes, please.
I declare this public hearing closed. Thank you. Mr. Vod, would you read the notice for the second public hearing for this evening, please?
Public hearing relative to the application for a license for flammable and combustible liquids, flammable gases, and solids for BJ's Gas Station at 463 Washington Street, 643 Washington Street, and 0 Summit Street, also known as Assessors Map 12, lots 59, 62, 63, 73, and 76.
Is there anybody here to speak in favor?
Vice
Mr.
President
Jacoby?
Jackson, members of the council, Jack Jacoby, 144 Bank Street. I represent the applicant, Attleboro Atlantic Development. While the engineer is setting up the board so you can see what we're proposing, I'd like to give you an overview. So this property was the Shed Place. It was owned by someone named DeVischer, I believe, and it was sold at auction last August or so, I believe. My client bought the property, and they have a lease arrangement in place with BJ's. And if this council approves the underground fuel storage tanks, they would then be able to begin construction, because we have been to the zoning board and they have granted us a special permit for the gas station and a couple other associated permits that were required. We've also been to the Conservation Commission, and they have approved the stormwater plan. And so, now that these boards are up, I can come over here and show you the bird's eye view. So here is Route 1, and this is the McDonald's, and the Irving gas station is right here across the street. And I think the Honeydew is over on the other side of the street, over in this direction. This is the property. And so what we have done, by the way, you see over here where the outline is, it comes across, so there is a small used car dealership here on the corner of Sweetland, and then there's a vacant lot that is owned by the Peter's house up here. And then we have our property, and then we have Better Automotive next door to it over here. And then you come to Rosewood. acquired title to this. This is owned by the city, it's in tax title. And also these two lots here. And one of the things that, through our zoning board process, was that we were sensitive to the fact that we do have neighbors, and neighbors have concerns. And so we agreed with the zoning board that we would restrict these two lots, that they would never be developed. And as a matter of fact, Charlie Adler from the Land Trust asked if we would donate it to them, because as we know, deed restrictions are good for 30 years and then they expire, but if we donate the land to the Land Trust, that's forever. And so we are probably going to donate these two house lots. What you'll see here is Summit Street, which is a paper street that would run all the way across here, but it was never built. And so my client not only has these lots here that they restricted, but they also go into the midline of Summit Street. And so what we agreed to do was to keep that forever in a wooded state and do absolutely nothing with it. In looking at the site plan, you'll see that the tanks are located back here. And this is an interesting topographical feature in that there is a huge outcropping of rock. And the intention is to make this flat. So the engineer will talk to you more about this, but make it flat so it's a 90-degree angle. Take out the triangle, what's below the hypotenuse, if I remember my 6th or 7th grade math correctly. That would leave a wall that's 30 feet high here, and it goes all the way down to 0 at this end, but it's substantially over 10 feet, over 15 feet, all the way up to 30 feet at this right-hand edge of the property. And so what we have done is we have taken pains to make sure that none of our neighbors will see this gas station. They will not hear it. They will not smell it. It will be simply invisible to them because of the buffers that we've created, because of the rock wall, and because of the area that we're going to leave untouched as woods. I don't want to steal too much of the thunder from my engineer, but we are going to have Austin Turner come up and speak about the site and the things that we're doing. We also are going to have Sean Kelly from Van Ness and Associates talk about the traffic study we did. And finally, for the Saco ending, we're going to bring up the tank experts. We're going to show you the tanks and all of the environmental precautions that we take with regard to those tanks, which you've probably seen before at other hearings, but I think it's important to make sure that everyone realizes that this is state-of-the-art 21st century design and development of the site. I handed out to you the Zoning Board of Appeals decision and the Conservation Commission decision, so you can see. One of the things that you might pay attention to, because reading through 20 pages may be a lot, but back starting on page 17, you'll see the special conditions that the Zoning Board put on this application. So they have limited the hours of operation from 6:30 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. They have had a couple of blackout periods. We will need to have some blasting done, and the engineer will talk about that. But we have talked to the fire department about that, and we have also, we know that the state police will strictly control that, but they have put a condition on with a blackout period so that when school buses are out, there will be no trucking on and off the site. There will be no blasting on the site. They limited us to 2 blasts per day. They also have given us a route, which basically means that the trucks have to go south on Route 1. They can't make a left turn across all 4 lanes of traffic, which can be difficult at certain times, I'm sure, because it is Route 1. There were a number of other conditions that relate to the earth removal portion of the operation, but I'll leave that to you. We are We think that this is an appropriate design for the site. Point out to you that it is zoned for business, and that means that something will be built there. It's Route 1, and we think this is actually something that would be the least intrusive thing for anybody who lives nearby, because it's going to have a very minor effect on traffic. The traffic engineer will talk about that. This is a BJ's gas station, so that means that anybody can buy gas there, but you get 5 cents off if you're a member. So therefore, people who are at the club already may well stop down the street to get gas. They will not be selling anything else from this site other than you can buy a BJ's membership, but there will be 2 employees in this little building that will control all of the pumps. And that's the only thing they're going to do, is control those pumps. They will not be selling lottery tickets, milk, whatever else it is that you can buy at a Cumberland Farms or the Irving place across the street. This is an operation that will not have trash, that will be a very clean operation, and the 2 employees will be absolutely monitoring the facility. One of the other points is that when we met with the fire department, they only have one request, which is that on either the building, and you'll see it when you see the side elevation, but either on the building or on the face of this canopy, they wanted us to put very large numbers with the address of the property, which I certainly understand and we certainly agreed to. The only other point, I guess, is that I know from other operations that clients have done is that the state police will strictly control the blasting operation on the site. If I remember when Mr. Carpianato tried to bring the church down to the Route 1 level, it's a joke some of you may remember, but it was only one time a day that they allowed it, and they shut the road down for about 10 minutes while they did the blasting, so that there was a safety factor there, and they chose a time when would be the least amount of traffic. So I would expect the state police would do the same thing in this case. So that's sort of the overview.
Any
like,
questions from any counselors? Counselor Dolan?
Oh,
What do you expect to have for blasting? Like how long, and I know it's twice a day, but how long?
the engineer has better information than I do, but I think that we're talking about a number of weeks, because he will explain again, but I think what you have to do is you blast, and then you have to cart away everything, and then you blast and you cart away everything. So it's not like you blast the whole thing all at once. It's a process that takes time.
I can answer that question for you, but.
Okay.
Yeah, so for the record, Austin Turner with Bowler, we're the civil land, we're the civil and land development consultants on the property. So in terms of blasting, what we're estimating right now is approximately 10,000 yards of material. With blasting, you can customarily get maybe 800 yards a day. So what happens is, as Councilor Jacoby was mentioning, there'll be one day where they prepare for the blast, and another day where they actually do the removal of the material and blast it. That process is customarily, we expect it to be between 30 and 45 days. Not every day is blasting, and not every day is the preparation for blasting. They alternate. So maybe it's 15 days of one, or 20 days of one, and then 15 or 20 days of the other. But that process in its entirety is expected to take about 30 to 45 days.
And then just to follow up on that, we are required, and the insurance company will do this, is that they will visit every home within a radius and every business within a radius. And the homeowner doesn't have to allow you to come in, but if they do, they fully inspect the property, they videotape it, so that if there's ever a claim, there is an absolute record that, if somebody says, my foundation was cracked, well, we'll know whether that's true or not, and the insurance company will respond to that.
That's good to know. Follow-up.
So just 2 more questions. The buffer on the right that you had said that you left, how big is that? Yep.
Referring to a space right there. I'll tell you for sure about yes.
And the 2 lots in the back, are those houses? Are those 2 houses right there?
No, there's a couple of little
What are those?
sheds up there.
So they're not, those aren't homes?
No,
Okay.
no.
Can't see that great from here, so I just wanted to see what those were.
This distance in here, from the edge of where our retaining wall would be, to the property boundary, is approximately 40 feet.
And what's on that other side?
Woods.
Woods. So you see, there's an undeveloped lot here, and then there is, and then the used car lot is underneath the trees a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Council DeSimone?
Yes, Mr. Bowler, there's one house that's,
Mr. Bowler, I don't
Oh,
have company. No, it's okay. I prefer to be called Mr. Bowler, thank you.
the one house that's 150 feet away, to some degree, my question was answered by Mr. Jacoby because there's insurance, but 150 feet with blasts of what I would imagine are be pretty big, that seems really close. Would you ordinarily blast that close to a home if you had the
Ordinarily,
option?
if I had an option, I'd prefer to be further, but in this case, this is well within the reason of normal blasting process. And like Mr. Jacoby mentioned, they have pre-blast surveys where they're gonna be doing that evaluation. And the blasts and the drilling that goes in there to prepare for it, it's all very controlled. So it's a very regulated process.
Okay.
So that's very much within the realm of industry standard.
Are there protections afforded to those, particularly those people? Some way to control debris or sediment,
course.
things from flying?
Absolutely, it's a great question. So the answer, the short answer is yes, and the longer answer is when they do the survey, and then also as they're preparing, there's gonna be maps and all kinds of controls that are in place to prevent material from just kind of going in random directions. It's very much controlled. They've got mats and other procedures that are in place to direct. And really, when they split the rock, it's not like an explosion like you'd see in a quarry. It's more of a splitting, and that rock is split so it can be removed as opposed to shot.
One more question, if I may. Are there any underground water lines or gas lines that would be of concern over there with blasting?
Not that we're aware of, and that's part of what we've done as part of this due diligence. Getting here wasn't by accident, it's been years in the making, so we're not aware of any utilities that would be in the way.
And I believe they're called blasting blankets, are they not, that go,
It's a common term for it.
yeah, which stop everything from flying up in the air. And
I just have, so even though it took quite a while to get here, Safe Dig would be on the site anyway, when you start to blast, correct?
Of course, yeah, there's gonna be people who monitor that are trained to do that.
And the other thing, I realize that the underground tanks for gasoline and all of that, but what about propane and those kinds of things? Will you be selling propane there?
No.
Okay.
So, I mean, as we mentioned, this facility isn't gonna be your customary, it's not like a fueling facility and also a quick serve or a convenience store. It's simply, this kiosk or that kiosk really exists just for the employees so that they can monitor what's happening if somebody needs assistance. You could buy a membership if you needed it or wanted it, but you can't buy anything else other than gasoline or membership.
And so, from my past experience, the police and fire are both on site when the blasting occurs. That's a requirement.
Yes.
And the zoning board even got so detailed as to prohibit us from having vacuums, outdoor vacuums on the site, because one of our neighbors asked that we not have outdoor vacuums because they can be noisy. So we agreed that we would not have outdoor vacuums. So that's how much the zoning board looked at this thing. They put us through our paces. So,
Mr. Council Blair?
If I remember, Jack, correctly, when you did Caponati's properties further down Route 1,
yeah.
the size of the blast was geared down. You monitor the blast itself with the size of the explosion?
The blasting contractors?
Yeah.
Will be doing that. I mean, it's like I said before, it's very controlled, and they'll be sizing the charges or whatever they need to do to fracture the rock.
More charges, less size?
However they're gonna do it, I'm not gonna profess to be a blasting expert, but I do know enough where they'll make sure it's appropriate for what they're trying to accomplish at that time, and given other factors, proximity to structures, roadway, timing, all that gets orchestrated with the fire department, the police department, so that's gonna be a very much controlled and monitored.
Hey, Jack, you might remember the Caponati property. Wasn't that a concern with the church?
Well, what happened there was that behind a rock face, there were seams of soil that had been areas that had been carved out by the glacier, and there were seams of soil. So when they took down the face, then there was soil, and they got too close to the building. And so there's nothing at all here, absolutely nothing.
With this particular property, you're not worried about the abutters?
No.
I mean, the back, like the church was.
Right, because there's just my client's land up here,
Yeah,
and it's
okay.
vacant land, and you can see the distance from, there's 290 feet to that house, 335 feet to that house. The closest one here is 150, this one is 205, but this is also significantly way on top of the hill.
Okay.
The hill goes up
But what
in
we
this
have-
direction.
What we
That-
have tonight,
if
too,
I might
is-
continue,
of course,
please.
yeah.
If that wall that you're talking about, that stone wall, is that gonna be similar to the property down the street when it's done?
It will not require what Carpionato had to do
Stabilize?
to stabilize it. Because they found that there were layers of rock, then soil, then rock, then soil, they actually had to put steel rods,
Pins, and I remember that.
pins in, to hold the thing up with a big disc on the
But
end.
what I'm
They
asking
had to
is,
pump concrete into the hole around the steel rod, so they created almost like a rebar concrete situation.
this wall is strictly gonna be the rock
It will be all
that's
rock.
there.
It will be all rock.
You're making a ledge, and how high did you say that was gonna be?
It's gonna be 30 feet.
30
and-
feet?
And one of the things that the zoning board required was that rather than having the buffer down here, which would do no good at all at the bottom of the 30-foot wall,
Right?
they told us that we needed to put the opaque fence, 6-foot tall fence up here, with plantings up here as well, and we have to maintain both of those. So that actually there is what would typically be what's called a type A screen up here, and then behind it is the forest. So the building inspector actually recommended that we put it up here rather than down here, which allowed us then to put the tanks here, because stealing his thunder again, but part of what you want to do is make sure that when the delivery trucks come in, so you see this striped area, that's all the loading zone that nobody can go into except for the truck delivering the fuel. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that everybody goes in a pattern and comes out in a way that is safe on site. And so by putting the tanks, we looked at putting it here, we looked at putting it here, but this was actually the best way for traffic.
Councilor Delicio.
Thank you. Jack, how far away are the tanks from the pumps themselves?
Austin?
About 60 feet.
About 60 feet. And you talked about the buffer, which was one of the questions I had. Now, that buffer is gonna buff the sound and the light, so the neighbors are further protected?
Yes, all of the lighting will be below the level of the 30-foot rock wall, so that the only people who can see this gas station will be those who are standing on Route 1 or at the Irving station across the street. And that was a particular design feature that we wanted to incorporate into this project.
Thank you.
Councilor Holmes.
Thank you.
Councilor Delicio.
This is going off of what Council Dolan had mentioned. Can you show us where the houses are in relation to this? Because it is a little hard. Is it the yellow?
So I think what might be helpful is, it was gonna be Act 2 of our presentation.
Oh, okay.
We did, no, now is appropriate, because you're asking a question. We have some cross-sections we did, which I'll unfold, and then I'll show you how it relates two-dimensional with the three-dimensional sections, because I think that'll be telling.
While he's setting that up, if I can, I'll just bring this forward a little bit. If it helps for the counselors to.
So is that a house, the 22?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, these are the house numbers, and those are the closest houses. And it's a fairly significant distance from, in my opinion, from any other gas station that we might see anywhere else in town.
It's close to the houses, though. It may be distant from other stations by 150 feet.
So one of the things that we did was to take a cross-section this way and take a cross-section that way to make sure that what we're telling you is in actuality what happened. And so he's putting these up.
All right. I'm gonna start on the roadway side. This is just the existing cross-section, just to give you an idea, and when I say existing, you can see. What we did is we cut a section starting from here in this corner here, coming through the site, kind of this red line. That's what you're looking at there, just to give you a sense. That's the existing section. So what you're seeing is that 18 Rosewood home that's listed on the far left is that home right there. And that gives you so you can see how it goes through the existing commercial building, which are these two structures here, as well as the wood products building, which is on our property, and that's proposed to be removed. And then you can see Route 1, and you can see McDonald's. Now, as that looks on the aerial, it's the home, those two commercial facilities, the existing commercial facility can be removed, and then McDonald's. All right? Everybody
Yep.
clear?
Yes.
Now, what that looks like. What that looks like in the proposed condition, as you can see again, that's the home. That's the existing better automotive facility that's gonna stay. There's our fueling facility. The wall is shorter in that location, and you'll see when I get to the other ones how that changes. There's the fueling facility. There's Route 1. And there's McDonald's. So when I say fueling facility, it's really that front corner, and we did that because it was the most proximate to that part of the home. So that gives you some sense of how those are positioned. And really, if you're in that home or if you're across the street on Rosewood, we have those two tall commercial buildings in front. So there is that visual buffering, and you're really going to be looking at the backside of the granite wall if you're going to be seeing anything from there. Any questions on the Rosewood side?
Any questions, any counselors?
Okay, so a similar theme as we go over on to Sweetland. What you can see again is we're starting in the back, so I'm looking at 33, which is just on the edge, so 38, right there. We cut that section again, so I'm going to be walking you from the far side down through one. So there's 38, just right there. And then you have the wooded buffer here, which is all of that existing vegetation, which is going to be maintained. And then you have, these are the two existing facilities or wood sheds that are on the property. Right in there, you get to Route 1, and then you come across, you have Honeydew. Right, you can see the vertical relationship of how that everything's related to each other. Okay, now proposed condition. So again, 38, the existing vegetative buffer that's remaining. This is where the ledge face wall begins to show up. You can see that there. Then you get into the fueling facility, Route 1, and Honeydew. And as you can see here, just in terms of sense of scale, as you come through this portion of the wall, which is on the lower side of things, this canopy is approximately 17 feet height from the ground surface to the top of the canopy. And when I say canopy, I'm referring to the canopy of the fueling facility. You have Route 1 and Honeydew. The wall in this location is higher than that, so this wall is approximately 18 to 20 feet tall in that location. Might be hard for you to see, but there's a gray line that kind of comes in through here as I'm tracing it. That's the existing ground elevation. So what's happening is as Mr. Jacoby mentioned, we're pulling that back and creating that vertical surface, and that would be the ledge face wall. And what we have, and I'll show you after I get into some of this discussion, we did some photo simulations of this too, to give you all a feeling of what it's going to look like from a 1. That really puts it into context. We have the before and afters that we'll show you in a little bit. And that really gives you a sense in kind of 3 dimensions what this is expected to look like.
Any questions from any counselors?
But not related to that. Can I ask a new question? Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Bowler, two more questions if I may. Number one, well, one of my questions escaped me, but I'll ask my second one. Inasmuch as this is a BJ station, is it fair to say that it's a destination station? And by that I mean, will there be increased traffic on the main road there to specifically get to this station? Or do you anticipate that'll just be the ordinary passers-by? Because I'm thinking it's a destination station.
So I'm gonna let Sean speak to the traffic in detail, but the short answer to your question is that the majority of the traffic that we expect to be coming here is people that are going from A to B. This happens to be a stop on their way from A to B. I can't tell you that if it were me, that I wouldn't be coming from home to go get gas and then going home again. So in that regard, there may be some destination traffic, but predominantly, it's gonna be the stop by on your way from, say work to home or home to work or whatever you happen to be doing. And if you're going to BJ's, for example, you might be stopping here on your way to BJ's on your way back from BJ's because it's conveniently en route, which is why this site's been selected. So I do not expect this to be primarily a destination facility, more of a convenient stop on your way from different places.
And my second question, I remembered if I may. Filling, is the and forgive me, I haven't had time to read the 20-page zoning decision, but
Just on a Friday evening.
when does the filling occur? Does that occur during business hours or after hours if they come to fill the tanks?
When you say fill, you mean?
Like when they need to replenish the gas?
Fuel truck.
Yeah, so the fuel truck, it could be there during business hours. And what we've done here, and I'll get into this a little bit, but generally speaking, as Mr. Jacoby mentioned, we have positioned those fueling tanks at the rear of the property. So a delivery vehicle would enter, as I'm drawing here on the north side of the property, come in and pull into their designated loading zone, and then have the ability to offload. And when they're doing that, they're not interfacing with people who are going to be using the facility. This facility is designed to come in, everybody pulls through forward through what I'm going to refer to as the back end of the fueling facility. What that's designed to prevent is people who are going to be competing for spaces. You know, there's a lot of positions where you might be going your head in and somebody's coming at you, or if you can't get, the tanks on the left side or the right side of your vehicle and you're trying to get into that spot, it creates a lot of inefficiencies. This is designed to prevent that, and then the hose lengths that are on each of those dispensers are longer. So if I pulled in and had my tank on the other side of the vehicle, the hose lengths can accommodate that, so people aren't queued up waiting 3 deep to get to this one spot when the other 3 are open. What that required of us to do is incorporate some additional precautionary measures and enhance the design. What's referred to, and you'll frequently hear, called the positive limiting barrier, which is that concrete pad which has the grooves around the perimeter. That's been expanded to account for that increased hose length. And we went through all that with the fire department, and that was part of the discussions we had early on in the vetting process for this property. So it is set up to be efficient. We can remove that loading operation to the rear of the site. We did have and contemplated as part of our discussions with the zoning board, because they were very thorough and asked us to go through a full vetting process for the concept. We had alternatives which had the tanks either on the left or right side of the property. But as we went through that with the zoning board, it was quickly found out that that's not really conducive to an efficient operation. That started intermingling loading vehicles with customers and fueling positions. This bile counts, and as you see in the zoning board's decision, was determined to be the most appropriate option for the property.
But filling could happen at night after hours?
It could happen at night, it could happen during the day too. And we designed it to happen during the day. If there was activity here, it would be isolated.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
If I
Councilor
can just
Holmes.
add one, excuse me, was there a question?
No, go ahead. You
I was just gonna add one thing, and it's just anecdotal, but I'm a BJ's member, and I live uptown here. And if I need 8 gallons of gas for 5 cents off, I'm probably not gonna make a special trip for 40 cents down to South Attleboro. But if I was down at BJ's buying meat or some other product, I probably would take advantage of filling it up. So other than a BJ's member, this is just a regular gas station for anybody, and the price will be competitive with all the other ones up and down the street.
Councilor Holmes.
Thank you. I know you had mentioned 30 to 45 days for the blasting, but how long do you anticipate the project actually happening?
Project construction, I expect to, from start to finish, would take under a year. It's probably in the nine-month variety. Patrick, is that fair? 6 to 9. Okay, 6 to 9 months.
Thank you.
But there isn't a whole lot of construction here. I mean, it's a little 2-person kiosk, some pavement, and a canopy.
Councilor Blair.
Jack, you mentioned stopping at BJ's and then going to get gas. this isn't gonna be like Stop and Shop or Shaw's where you get points. This is strictly a discount with the card,
Correct.
so there'll be no point system.
No, it's, you get 5 cents off a gallon if you show your BJ's card.
With the card,
Yeah,
no point system.
correct.
Like Cumbies.
Any other questions?
I think they're trying to keep it simple.
Well, I just think, Jack, the point system, my wife screams and hollers if she's got those points from Stop and Shop, and I don't get up and use them, they fall off.
Oh, okay, I see what
All
you mean.
right, so what I'm saying is, a person wouldn't necessarily go to BJ's and run over for their gas. They have the opportunity to stop anytime
That's correct.
and
It-
get that same
Right, the
discount.
point I was just making is that I don't think you'd drive 5, 6, 7 miles
No, no.
just to go there.
Well, you'd be
Because
surprised.
the discount isn't enough.
Yeah.
You know, you'd spend 20 of the 40 cents that you saved on getting there and back.
Council Reynolds, did you have a question?
Yes, if I might. So I know the zoning board of appeals agreed, and they put you through a pretty rigorous process, and I will say, Jack, that you had called me early on in the process and let me know, which I had not heard of it even happening at the time that you spoke to me, and the only person I had heard to it from at the time was this Mr. Piver. Since then, there's a lot of other people that have jumped on board. Have you felt in your discussions and what's going on with the zoning board of appeals that you've answered or alleviated some of their concerns? I mean, I know you have the board, obviously, the
Well-
zoning board of appeals. How about these particular neighbors in general?
The fact that some of them are here tonight probably means that they still are not happy. But I think two things. One is Mr. Piva is not here tonight, and we have satisfied him. And I think the second thing is that this is commercially zoned property on Route 1. It's going to be something. Given the size of the site, I would venture that the most likely alternative would be some sort of a fast food place, that the zoning board would not have the ability to control their hours. And that was one of the things that Kathy Merkel asked at the hearing was, would you rather see here another Wendy's type place, which is open till 2 in the morning and they're cooking hamburgers all night? Or would you rather see something like this that will be closed down at 10:30, and as soon as the employees leave, the lights will be turned off and that will be it for the night? And so I think that even though our neighbors will not agree with me, I think this is frankly a fairly benign use for a prime piece of real estate on Route 1.
Okay, so, since this is my ward, and quite a few of these people I know well or know of, if they were to contact you for other concerns or whatever, I mean, you were passed through there, would you be willing to listen to any of the things they might ask? Obviously, you settled something with Mr. Piver because he was more than outraged, so I don't know what you did to quiet him down, but you must have done something. So my comments would be, would you be comfortable with the rest of these people contacting you? if they-
Absolutely. We're gonna have to be good neighbors for a long
Yeah,
time,
yeah.
assuming you grant this permit. And it doesn't do anybody any good to get the relationship off on a bad foot. And so if there are questions, and certainly after operation starts, if there are complaints, I've done this for Carpianato. I told people, you can find me very easily. Call me and I'll make sure the right person finds out about it and we'll
Sure.
solve the problem.
Sure.
So, for instance, I know there was a problem with trash at the Mayfair Plaza, which was blowing across May Street.
Yeah.
And as soon as I got the phone call, I took care of that, and they had somebody
you
out.
did.
They had somebody right out there. So I will pledge that again. I plan to be around here for at least another 10 years. Hopefully I'll retire by the time I'm 80. And I will do my best to make sure that if there are issues or complaints that come up, that we make sure the right person at BJ's hears them and takes some steps.
So you and I will be in touch, and I can make sure they're either in touch with me or with you as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Dolan?
Can you just tell me where Hill Street is in reference? Is it, can you show me, is it?
Right there, yeah.
Okay,
Right
thank
at
you.
the top of the hill. Any other questions from any of the councilors? Yes, Council Waterman.
The force of the blast, maybe you said it and it slipped by me, will be directed towards the woods, am I correct? Where will the greatest force be directed?
I can't speak to where the greatest force would be directed, but I do know that it's intended to be controlled, like I had mentioned previously. It's not intended to create this incredible explosion. Oftentimes what it is, just you're gonna feel this kind of bump, and then you'll see the mat that's gonna bounce. And then the rock really splits so that they can pull it off and then
Okay.
process it and take it out. But it's not intended to be some big visual extravaganza. But I can't speak to how the blast is gonna be directed. That's more blasting experts' question.
So across the road where not Dunkin' Donuts, Honeydew is, that they won't be affected across the road.
Part of what we have to do is it's gonna be controlled by fire department, state police, local police. I don't expect anybody's gonna be affected, frankly. It's a
Okay.
pre-blast survey which determines
Yeah.
all of that.
In the event that something untoward happens, the fire department can shut it down immediately. They have the absolute control of that, and I'm sure the state police will be very cooperative too. We do not expect that, but we know that if the blasting contractor makes an error, they will shut it down.
Any other questions?
Can I just
Please.
make a comment if I may?
Yes,
So
Council
with the blasting, I understand thank you. I understand a lot of the trepidation with the blasting, but I went through this myself where we live in a new condo development recently, and we've had condos built across the street as well as on the northern side of the property. And we did the whole pre-blasting survey where we allowed the insurance company to come in. They literally videotaped every room, every foundation. I was curious, and I actually watched, and yes, you have state police on site, you have fire on site, and it's not like it used to be, so it's not, and I think when people hear blasting, they think like these big strung out rows of TNT and dynamite, and it's just like blasting, 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 but if I'm correct, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's more, it's a little more in depth than that, where it's actually charges going into the rock itself, as opposed to being strung up on the front of the.
My understanding is they drill.
They drill and they drop the charges
Charge goes down.
inside.
Yes.
It kind of splits the rock that way, because we're less than 150 feet, and there wasn't 1 ounce of damage. We had, pictures jump a little bit on the wall, but I mean very minutely. I just think that where it's controlled more, and I certainly understand, the neighbors' trepidation as well. So I shared some of the concerns that Council Reynolds have, and I think, Jack, over the years, you've definitely proven yourself a man of your word. So if you say that you'll reach out and continue to be that conduit between the neighbors and us, I think that's what we would expect, based on what we've done in the past.
Thank you. And the other thing is that, rock, we all think of rock as just a very hard substance, but sometimes there's harder rock and sometimes there's softer rock. And as I understand the process, what they're trying to do is just loosen it up so they can come in with a machine and drag it down and then load it on the truck. So it's not like not like in the old days in the cartoons where.
Road runner?
Yes.
Are there any other questions this evening?
So,
We got the
Okay.
before and afters.
yeah, we can show you
Mr. Jacoby,
what we think are the better.
could you speak into the microphone? 'Cause
Sure,
I guess
surely, I'm
everybody
sorry.
can't hear it. Thank you. Didn't-
We have
Thank you.
a before and after photograph, which we think will be helpful to you in making a decision.
Tight.
It's like doing the limbo.
Yeah, so reverse limbo.
So it's pretty self-explanatory. Obviously, there's the existing photo, like same vantage point. So you can see that's the facility that's coming down. You can see the woods in the back. And as I'm standing in front of the proposed one, you can see the new fueling facility. That existing structure would have been right in there, and then you can see the ledge wall. And behind it, and then the fueling facility in the foreground.
So that's why I feel confident in saying that the only place that you'll be able to see this from is Route 1. You will not be able to see it even from the woods behind. And then for belt and suspenders, the zoning board had us put a 6-foot high fence, dark color, no white plastic fence. They specified it had to be either brown or gray. with plantings in front of it. So again, we think that it's really kind of tucked in there in a way that's sensitive to our neighbors.
Thank you.
So
I just
we
have
did
one
have
more question, if
Yes,
I
go
can.
ahead, Counselor Reynolds.
I know this is gonna probably sound ridiculous, but is there any answer to this question? Why, does traffic show that there's need for another gas station in that area? I guess that is what.
I think the answer
My
is.
baffling question.
No, you're not the first person to ask that question, and I think the short answer is that it's a free market, and that's what we do here in America, and the stronger stations will survive and the weaker ones will go out of business. That may sound terrible, but that's
The way it is.
business. But in reality, there are a lot of gas stations in South Attleboro, and I assume that a lot of people come over the line from Rhode Island to buy their gas there, but
I think the investment, I mean, there's just in the time for Jack and I to stand up here, right? Just the money spent on the site work. There's a very big financial investment that BJ's is making. in
You
this
can
property.
see that, so I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely, so.
They don't take that decision very lightly. I know that doesn't answer your question directly, but if they're gonna be investing that kind of capital and effort,
They're thinking they're gonna.
they know that this is gonna be a productive facility for them.
Access, so some of it's the on and off access too, from
And it-
95 to 95.
And I think frankly, what it does is, if you look at it this way, even though it's not at the club itself, it provides a service for club members that doesn't exist, and that's another offering that they clearly have decided is something that the club members that go to that facility need and want.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions?
So Sean Kelly is from Vanassan Associates, and he did the traffic study. You'd like to bring him up to talk to you about that?
Here, Tony,
No.
I'll take those. You
Not quite as slender as Austin, so.
do your thing.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the council. For the record, my name's Sean Kelly. I'm a traffic engineer with Vanassan Associates. On behalf of the project team, thank you again for having us before you tonight. What I'd like to do, if it pleases the council, is just take a few minutes to walk you through our traffic study, how it was conducted, what our findings were, what our recommendations are, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that members of the council may have. I think we're all familiar with the project site, but just to orient ourselves, we're on the west side of Washington Street, Route 1, which is a state-numbered route. Barrow Street, connecting roadway that connects over to Route 1A to the east. The project, again, is described as a 12 vehicle fueling position gas station. for
Excuse me,
BJ's.
Mr. Kelly, our audience can't hear you.
Because
Sure.
you're not at the microphone, so
yeah.
that's.
You don't mind, thank you.
Oh, no problem.
You guys should be good. You good?
Yeah,
Bump
I
both
think that's
boards over
fine. So the first stage of our study is we went out and collected some existing condition data. We took a look at traffic volumes, we took a look at safety characteristics. We collected daily volumes along Route 1. The corridor carries about 15,500 cars on a typical weekday, about 16,000 cars on a typical Saturday, a little bit higher. Peak hour flows range anywhere from about 760 cars an hour in the morning, 1,600 cars an hour in the evening commuter peak, and then about 1,700 cars on a Saturday. So that's the flavor of the existing traffic. It's fairly evenly distributed, 55% one way or the other, but it's not no major trends in terms of directional volume. We looked at the safety characteristics, how many crashes occurred out there. And the locations that we looked at were Route 1 at Sweetland Avenue, Route 1 at Barrow Street, Route 1 at Rosewood Avenue, and also Barrow Street at Route 1A. What we found was that none of these locations exhibited a high crash rate. They all were in the range of about 2 to 2.5 crashes per year, which is below the state average, so there was no inherent issues regard to safety. We looked at vehicle speeds in the corridor. It's a 40-mile-an-hour road. Cars typically are traveling 41 to 43. As part of our assessment, we do a sight distance analysis. We always bump that up a little bit, so we use 45 miles an hour. The sight lines out here, as you can see, are excellent. It's a very straight tangent section of road, and the available sight distance well exceeds what's needed for the speeds in the corridor. As far as the traffic analysis, we take all the data we collected, we project it out in your future condition to get a handle as to how traffic operates in 7 years. That's the state standard. We've adjusted to account for everything that else is going on in town. The shops at Mayfair, the shops on Washington, All of that traffic's been incorporated into our model to forecast what things will look like in the future, independent of the fueling station. With regard to the project itself, the trip generation summary chart there, we walk through basically the three critical periods: your morning commuter peak, your evening commuter peak when the commuter traffic is highest, and then your Saturday peak, which is more of a shopper's peak. As you can see, that the total volume in that first column is the total number of trips that the project generates. And in the morning, it's about 120. In the evening, it's about 170, and then on a Saturday, it's about 150. These are your ins and outs. As one of the council members pointed out, not all of these trips are new trips. A great percentage of this traffic is actually what we call pass-by traffic. That's traffic already on Route 1. As you can imagine, typically you don't leave your house with the sole purpose of going out to gas your car up and then go back home. Typically, you gas your car up when you're either in a commuter trip or another shopping trip when you're on the road. The ITE data says that about 58% of this traffic will be pass-by. We think that it actually has the potential to be higher because, as pointed out, we have the BJ's Club up the street, so people are already going to be out there going to BJ's. We took a more conservative approach and said 50%, which nets out the new traffic is about 60 cars in the morning, 30 in, 30 out, about 84 on our evening, 42 in, 40 out, and then about 77 on a Saturday, 39 and 38 out. So the actual increases are less than 1 car per minute coming into the site and going out of the site. Not all the cars come from the same direction. Some are going to come from the south, some are going to come from the north. A smaller percentage will come off Barrow. So when you factor the different approaches they're coming from, the actual increases that any one segment of Route 1 will experience is really more on the order of a car every other minute and really every fourth minute in any direction. So it's, these aren't major increases when you factor it into that there's 1,700 cars out there an hour. We're going to be adding on the order of 30 to 40. Looked at the increases in terms of delays, and quite frankly, there's no notable increase. We did understand it during the ZBA process that the residents on Sweetland Avenue and Rosewood Avenue did express concerns about getting off of their streets and the delays they experienced today, and will those delays increase dramatically due to the project. What we did is we utilized the computer model to look at their existing delays, but then we also went out and set up video cameras across the street and actually video recorded those approaches, and went through all of the data and looked at how long it takes to get off those streets today. We did it over the course of 7 hours. We did recordings out there. And what we found was that the motorists typically during busy times wait anywhere from 20 to 25 seconds on average to make a turn off the street. Left-hand turns take longer, as you can imagine, than rights. Right-hand turns take less time. When you add the traffic that we're generating in, those delays increase about 1 second. So if you're a resident on these streets, and a car is coming to BJ's, you might wait 1 more second to pull out than you do today. In terms of our recommendations, it's really focused primarily on site access, and I think Austin's done a good job walking through that. One-way circulation pattern, everyone coming in the northern driveway, everyone going out the southern driveway. The southern drive will have a left turn lane and a right turn lane, so that cars that are waiting to turn left don't block people that want to go right. It'll make for more efficient flow. Stop signs, pavement markings, everything done in accordance with all industry standards. And quite frankly, there is another review processes in place right now where we have submitted this to Mass DOT. This is a state corridor, so we need to get an access permit. So their engineers are reviewing this as we speak. So we're confident the project, again, is designed. It's going to be less than a car a minute on any section of Route 1, and the increases that you'll see are about a second per vehicle, which aren't very high. That's really all I have for tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions that members of the council have.
Any questions? Councilor Dolan.
Can you repeat the part, you said there's a left lane turn, you're making a special lane, is that what you said? Coming which way?
Sometimes you
talk
leave
kind of fast, I was like.
Yeah, sure.
It's on the site.
Right. Sometimes when you leave a driveway that's under stop control and there's only one lane, you want to make a right-hand turn. And it's a much easier to turn to the left, but you're stuck behind someone that's turning left, so you're basically delayed by them. Our drivers will have 2 lanes leaving, so.
Oh, all right. I got you.
You won't get stuck if you're going right.
No, yep, okay, thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions for Mr. Kelly? Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'll let you.
So then we're going to finish with the actual tanks. And Craig Gendron is here from Stantec, tank engineer, and he's going to put up a nice picture for you that will explain.
While the picture's getting placed in its location. My name is Craig Gendron. I'm a senior principal engineer with Stantec. And what I'm gonna do is sort of walk you through a little bit about what this picture shows. And first of all, this is not a picture of the site. This is representative of a very typical installation, so all the features are consistent with what is gonna be placed on this site. So first of all, the tank systems itself, they're probably already know a lot of this, heavily regulated by the state and the federal government. This particular design has passed all of the inspection requirements and all of the review requirements that the state and the federal government require. So it exceeds all of the regulatory requirements. BJs and other folks who put in these tank systems can elect to just follow those rules explicitly, or they can do even more. And BJs is elected to do more. And a couple of the features that are represented here are, number one, there's emergency stop buttons that are there for protection of the public should there be an issue with the tank systems, if there's any problems in delivery or anything else. BJ's has multiple and redundant e-stop systems there, so there can be shut-offs that are done very much more convenient than what is typically required by the regulations. There's also, as I think Austin had mentioned there, extra long hoses that are being placed here to allow for some comfort for the folks that are pulling up to the dispensers and using them. It makes it easier to fill on both sides of the vehicles. And that precipitated, again, as Austin had mentioned before, an expansion of the fueling apron and an expansion of the positive limiting barrier, the grooves and the outside of the actual fueling apron. So that's another extra feature. And then a third one I'll bring up here is on the filling side. What's required by regulation is a single overfill protection device. In this case, there are two. There's a mechanical device which limits any kind of fill that happens in the tank over 95%, just stops the filling operation in its tracks. And there's also one that happens even before that, an electronic sensor that watches the level of the fluid in the tank, and it actually picks it up even sooner. So there'll be an electrical signal which will go to an alarm, and the fueling will stop. So those are some of the extra things that are incorporated into this particular design. Sort of moving from the tanks and up to the dispensers, I'll just point out a couple of the features here. Number one, the tanks themselves, all the piping is double-walled. Okay, it's fiberglass tanks, fiberglass piping. The tanks themselves, there's a space between the two walls. Okay, there's a double wall, so there's a space between them, and it's filled with brine. And there's a monitor that sits on top of the tank, and it has a very small tolerance for differential between when it's initially commissioned. And if there's ever any issues with the level in the tank, then that's picked up by the 24/7 monitoring system, and alarms go off, and folks will react to whatever the situation is. There are also a number of some sensors that are in both the containment area on top of the tanks and on the dispenser sumps. So if there's ever any issues there, again, it's another safety feature. It'll pick up that moisture or whatever's there, and it'll allow the system to record that issue, and the attendant can be alerted to it, and then reaction can be made. Other features here, there was a question at one of the previous hearings about venting and emissions and things like that. And just to kind of go over how this all happens and where folks might have viewed it as an issue, I disagree with that, of course. But during a fueling operation here, what happens is that the fueling truck pulls up, connects its fill pipe to the top of the tank, but it connects another pipe to the tank itself, which then collects any of the vapors that are built up in the tank because of the extra volume that is being displaced by the filling operation, goes back into the tank delivery truck itself, carted away and treated. So it's not any emission that happens at the site during a filling operation. I think there might have been some thoughts that might have been an issue. But that's what this is called stage 1 vapor recovery, and that's exactly what it's meant to counteract. There was also some questions about whether or not during overnight or during certain times of the day when people aren't there, that there might be some fugitive release from the vents or piping or something like that. And one thing that I noted then, and I'll note again now, is that there's actually a pressure relief valve on the top of all the vents that will only release under pressure. And typically these tanks are operating under a vacuum because the gas is leaving these tanks, all right? And it leaves behind a void, creates a vacuum, so it's hardly ever an issue in terms of pressure buildup. But on top of that, there's a pressure relief valve, so there's no fugitive emissions that happen.
Secondary recovery.
Yeah, there was also a question that somebody asked, well, there are other features that would add to vapor recovery. Well, one thing they used to have, and they don't anymore, about 5 or 6 years ago, they did away with it in Massachusetts. There was secondary vapor recovery, stage 2 vapor recovery. That's no longer a requirement. It's not part of our design, no longer required, but again, I think that there was some question about whether or not it should have it in this design, and it's not required. All right, so safety systems, I've mentioned, the tank, the piping itself, double-walled, monitored with a 24/7 monitoring system. Some other features that are now above the actual tank apron and near the dispensers. You've got the kiosk, which is where the attendant is. There are CCTV cameras that are located, one at each dispenser, to keep an eye on the operations there. Those are all visible with a screen inside the attendant station so that they can view exactly what's happening at all times. There's also, as one would probably guess, there's an entire fuel suppression system that is in place. It operates in a couple ways. One, if there's ever a fire or any kind of situation that creates heat, there's heat sensors that are located throughout the canopy, and that will automatically activate the fuel suppression system. There's also a redundant system such that if an attendant or passerby, whoever, can see that there's issues there, there's a pull cord for it. So that system would activate as well, if that were the situation. Automatically, whenever there's a release of any kind of deluge system like this, the fire department is automatically notified. It's through the environmental monitoring system. It makes that automated announcement. The system does not use PFAS, PFOA, or any of those kinds of compounds. It is a calcium carbonate type of dry chemical, non-toxic. So anyway, so fuel suppression is incorporated here. It's multiply redundant. Tank systems, double-walled, all the way through the piping, through to the dispenser. Vapor recovery is incorporated into the design as the rules would require. And there's extra systems that are in place as well that go above and beyond the regulations.
Do any counselors have any questions? Well,
Wow.
does that conclude your,
I think we have
Shall we?
completed what we intended to present tonight.
great?
Thank you for listening to us, and
You, counselor?
we hope you'll act favorably when the time comes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there, I'm gonna take the pictures down, they're gonna read them off.
Can I, Counselor Jackson, can I ask one more question? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Jack, can I just ask one more question about the DOT process? What happens with that?
In order to have access onto Route 1, you are required to have a direct access permit from Mass DOT, and they will not entertain that until all local permits have been granted. But we had preliminary discussions with them and feel very confident that they will approve it. But every curb cut on Route 1 is controlled by the state.
Okay.
And they do their best to reduce the number of curb cuts possible. So we only have 2 here, and that's, the right number, because we want the traffic to circulate through the site in an orderly fashion.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacoby. Thank you. Is there anybody else here to speak in favor? Anyone here to speak in favor? Is there anybody here to speak against? Please come to the podium, one at a time.
Take that sign down, Katie, at the end, so
I'll
I
have to
can
get
get
the
the
sign down.
podium.
Right there, thank you.
Thanks, Kate.
Hi,
Hi,
could
good
you
evening.
state your name and address, please?
My name is Joe Alves. I live at 26 Rosewood Avenue.
Thank you.
I just have a couple of questions. I was just concerned about parking, like if they're gonna have all this big dump trucks and contractor vans or whatever. Are they gonna be parking on Rosewood or even Sweetland?
No, they usually park, they're required to park on site,
Oh, okay.
on their site, not on the side streets.
Oh, okay. Okay. And then, when they start doing the blasting there, they're gonna be drilling a lot of holes. I wonder how much noise that's gonna create. Is that gonna be like a lot of noise happening and for a length of time? How many holes are gonna be drilled? I imagine that's gonna be,
Council Reynolds?
So we could ask them to come back up and answer that for you, but I do think that they made address that a little bit by saying that it's not like the old days. It's not like a blast that shakes everything or that it's that loud. But is there somebody, Jack, that can come forward and talk about that? The drilling, well, yeah.
Just
Is
go
that
ahead,
okay?
you wanna come to the podium? Thank you.
I've never been accused of speaking softly, though.
Let me just add before he does that we will police where the employees of the contractor park, and that if anybody calls you and tells you that they're parking on Rosewood, you call me, it will be taken care of.
Okay, thank you.
Jack will slash your tires. So from a blasting perspective, as I've mentioned previously, I don't mean to be talking my back to you, but.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, So customarily what they'll do, I can't speak to how many holes they'll drill specifically, but they'll probably prepare a couple of what they call shots during the course of the day. So you might see a handful of holes drilled during the course of a day, and there's a very limited hour in which they're allowed to do that. And then that stops, and then the second day they'll have 2 blasts, 1 and then 2. It fractures the rock and they remove it. And they'll do the opposing day, so maybe it's 2 or 4 holes, perhaps,
So they're
depending
not
on.
gonna do the drilling for every,
It's not every day they won't be drilling.
Charge.
It's they'll drill, stop, blast, stop, drill, stop. That's how it's gonna go.
okay, thank you.
But I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions?
No, I think that's good, thank you.
You're welcome. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Dowling? No? Okay. Anybody else here to speak against?
Good evening.
evening.
Kevin Rogers, 18 Hill Street.
Hi, Kevin.
You had a question about these folks. These folks have been good, getting a hold of us and asking if we had concerns.
Nice to hear.
So in that aspect, they've been very good. I think a lot of people on here tonight, like myself, we got the letter from the planning board saying that they accepted the plans and the recommendation. So I thought it was a done deal. I wasn't gonna come tonight at all either, because, I've never been involved in this procedure, and I didn't know what it was about. So I think might be some of the reason for the low turnout for the neighbors. But, our concern, well, my concern, again, is a health concern. You go on the internet and you read about gas stations and the proximity of people that live close to gas stations. And it is it's a concern. And also the devaluation of property values. Another concern, you, again, go on the internet. I know you can go on the internet and find anything you want to find to edge you into the direction that you want it to go. But it's a real concern. I mean, it's property values, safety concerns, health concerns, traffic concerns. I brought up the last time with the planning board about tanker trucks pulling into this gas station. And again, there's 10 gas stations within a mile and a half. But all the other gas stations have intersections where the tanker trucks come in from either a light or an off street. This is directly on Route 1. The only way in is these tanker trucks are gonna have to come in and take a 90-degree turn. And, have you ever seen a tractor truck take a turn, take a right-hand turn? They've got to come out to the middle lane to make that swing in. That's got to be a concern. But I'm just here to say that I'm opposed to this, and I hope you consider that. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions?
I just have one quick question.
Please, Counselor.
At the zoning board, did that come up about the tanker trucks? Because it says in the
Yes.
decision that they're not going to service, they don't have a dispenser that allows 18-wheeler trucks to fuel.
No, but I'm talking about the tanker truck that has to
Oh, to fill the tank?
service the, yeah.
Okay, forgive me, but they're not gonna serve, right? You're not gonna dispense gas to 18-wheelers, big trucks?
No, they said they
That won't be
weren't.
accommodated.
Yep, okay.
And the other thing they were saying about nobody will be able to see this gas station from that neighborhood. But anybody on Rosewood Ave, and I'm on the corner of Hill Street, I'm on street level with Route 1. No, unless they're putting it 30 feet in the ground, it's gonna be, right there in front of me. I can see the gas station across the street, the Irving gas station, I can see plain as day. Honeydew Donuts, I see all that, Taco Bell. So, saying that nobody in that neighborhood is gonna see it, it doesn't ring true to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Barbara Rogers from 18 Hill Street. I have, first and foremost, I sincerely do not believe we need another gas station in that area. The second one is, I know the man does a good job with the traffic control, but because the fact that McDonald's is now there now, it's, like, I can go down Rosewood, but the people on Sweetland, they have to come out, and that McDonald's traffic is in the outside lane, so all the people that don't want to sit and wait for the people to go into McDonald's, like, zoom over to the slow lane, so that it's impossible for them to get out at time, not all the time, but a lot of times. So, so that's that, and thirdly, I made notes. Oh, yeah, I live on Hill Street, which is a hill, so Route 1 is down here. Where is, right, so yeah, so Route 1 is down here, but we're up here. So we can see, can you explain to me, like, the wall, because I think you said it was only gonna be shorter on my side, and it would be longer on this side.
So where are you?
Where, is that me?
Is it 18?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay.
So it's a hill, the terrain is a hill. And so like my husband said, we can now see our slider that used to have all that nice foliage and all that, we can see the bright lights of Irving. So I don't know how we're not gonna see the bright lights of yours.
You're this 18, are you that 18 or this?
I don't know what 18 that is. I
No,
think
that's
it's
you,
up-
yeah.
You're there.
Up here.
Got it.
I'm on the top, Hill Street. I'm on the top of Hill Street. So we're on the hill, so we can see over, so can you tell me, like, again, where I'm looking, because it's hard when I'm on the other side of the.
Of course, yeah, you can see anything back there, no, of course.
Like where what height the wall is on this side, Rosewood side.
Sorry, and to the chair, of course, you don't mind if I'm engaging directly?
No, not at all.
All right, so make sure, I don't want to be presumptuous.
I'm sorry.
No worries, no
No
worries.
worries, Bob.
That's what
I'm
we're
used to
here
doing
for.
hearing stuff, so I make sure I ask, just because I got yelled at before for not doing that, so.
Just speak
Sorry,
loud.
I'm back.
So you're back here,
Correct.
right? And so this wall is really short.
Yeah, see, it's short here, so
It
I don't
is short, it is
understand.
shorter, and we had done the section which is like,
So we are gonna be able to see.
I don't think so. So I don't have that in this section, but, so there is, you're over a football field away, right? So this is 300 feet?
Yeah.
And this site here, from view, is probably a 30 or 40 foot elevation change,
Correct.
right? So we're gonna be much lower, there's 300 plus feet of existing vegetation. That's gonna make, we're not touching any of that. And then, all of this is staying in its entirety. So, I mean, can you see this building for that? You can see that, can you see this guy here for that? Can you see that building?
Yes,
What part of that building do you see?
the whole thing,
You see the whole thing?
yeah.
So we'll be a little bit lower in that building, then we're gonna have this wall and this screening that's going up around the wall. So this wall here,
Is it possible to make that taller? Why is it short on this side?
it's short on that side because the way the topography is worked, you can see that there's a big hill that climbs up and that's higher and it comes down.
Crazy.
We're gonna have a solid fence back here, which isn't wholly depicted in this graphical representation. That fence is gonna be about 6 feet tall, in the back, solid wood, which is gonna put that fence maybe just under the canopy level, perhaps in between the canopy level. And on top of that, we're gonna have the vegetation which goes in front of the fence, and those trees there might be 10 feet at their peak growth. So while we're gonna be 40 feet lower than you, this building is higher than our
Right.
canopy is gonna be.
I can see,
Nope.
sit down.
I'm happy to talk to you as long as you, and so answer any
I
questions
just
you have.
wanted to understand.
Yeah, of course, no, that's what we're here.
Jack's gonna sit
All
down.
right, so,
Tell you what, before you leave, let me grab you, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna give you a business card.
Okay, is
If
it,
you have more
let's do
questions,
that.
I'm happy to have you answer.
okay.
is there anybody else here to speak?
And I have one more question.
Okay.
About the, I'm sorry.
No,
worries,
don't
no
be
worries.
sorry.
The drilling,
Blasting?
thank you, blasting. Because that area is all ledge, that's why they have to blast to begin with. So underneath our house is all ledge. So I didn't know if, when the blasting occurs, the ledge disturbs the rest of the ledge up the hill.
No, it's controlled, and the idea is that we're fracturing the rock that's immediately proximate to the site.
So,
The rock-
so that fracture doesn't fissure down into the
No,
rest of it?
Obviously, there'd be a pre-blast survey that we can conduct, provided you allow people to come in and videotape or take photographs of
Yeah,
your home.
but
The
then
intent
our
is that
house
that's
will
not
have
gonna
cracks.
Right, but they'll be documented, and the intent is not that it's gonna have these fractures that extend 400 feet beyond it, it's localized, very localized. And this is, I mean, so if you have more questions or you wanna talk about that,
Okay.
feel free to call me directly,
Okay,
you're welcome
Austin,
to.
thank
Yeah,
you.
You're welcome.
Any questions for
thank
Mrs.
you.
Rogers?
For your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Rogers.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else here to speak against?
I am William Stinnett from 25 Sweetland Avenue. So, good evening, thanks for the chance to speak here. So my main concern with this gas station, first of all, I just want to echo the comments that were made earlier. Applicant clearly is making more than a good faith effort to be good neighbors to the neighborhood. There's no question about that. The thing is, we have to consider whether or not this gas station should be put in for a couple reasons. My main concern is the health concern that has been brought up before, specifically in the area of benzene gas emissions. Gas stations emit benzene gas, right? So that's just, now we heard earlier from the engineer that talked about the recovery system that's put on their gas tanks. In studies that I've found that were conducted just back in 2018 at gas stations in California, the hypothesis of the study was to figure out whether or not current setback distances are still proper, considering they were originally formulated about 20 years ago. It ends up that they were not, but we'll get to that. So in all of those cases, they talked about emissions coming from vent pipes that were attached to gas tanks. Now, I think we just heard that, I mean, technology advances, right? So I think we just heard that the gas tanks that we're about to put in don't do that. I think I heard that, right? Okay, so they don't have vent pipes, correct?
If I can,
You may.
my memory from what he said, and I've heard it 3 or 4 times, is that there is a
Pressure valve.
emergency pressure,
But only in an emergency situation.
only in an emergency, and that there's usually a negative pressure, there's vacuum. It would be a very rare occurrence.
Okay, so given that there are no emergency situations, that thing will vent 0 benzene gas.
It doesn't vent if there's no pressure buildup in the tank, and again, I'm sorry if
Come
I'm
to the
quick
podium,
answering the
please.
right way.
The answer is yes, it will not.
Yes, it will not.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that leaves us really with benzene emissions
Point of
that come
order.
from the
Yes,
pumps.
please.
Thank you. So I just want to remind people, this is to kind of fill council, and if there's other conversations that need to occur, it can certainly happen. I don't know what the point of order is, but I probably would say something like, we just need to be addressed during this.
Sure. So concentrate your questions to us, and
My
then we'll get your
apologies.
answers to you.
Okay,
Thank
so,
you. Thank
so
you,
that leaves
Councilor
only
Rose.
the consideration of the venting of those benzene gases, which of course is a known carcinogen, right? Everybody knows the seriousness of this benzene gas, right? Okay. So it's a known carcinogen that gets vented by gasoline gas station operations. So there are setback limits that are in place. The typical number you hear is 100 feet away from a gas station. 300 feet if you're talking about the presence of small children, such as at a playground or a school or a neighborhood, right? But those computations are done for a single gas station. So we have already talked a lot about the density of gasoline stations already within that neighborhood's area. Now, of course, given any single gas station, the benzene gas emissions will reduce over distance, right? So, for example, the Irving gas station, right, that gas station right there, which is across the street from this neighborhood that we're talking about, really was not a problem. It wasn't a problem because it was simply too far away. But that doesn't mean that the toxicity of benzene drops to zero at the 101st foot. They had to pick some point at which they thought that it's a tolerable risk. 100 feet is what they came up with 20 years ago. Right. So at the 101st foot, there's still toxicity, but it drops off with distance. One of my concerns is if we put this gas station in place, first of all, this gas station is not Irving's. It's 60 feet closer to us across the width of Sweetland Avenue, right next to our neighborhood. Now, I believe they've already computed a lot of the distances to the nearest dwellings, and they think they're outside that 100-foot limit. I think significantly so. I'm sorry, it's outside that 100-foot limit. But what about the concentrated effect of all those gas stations in our area? I'm not sure. Now, I'm not an environmental engineer, but I don't know that anyone has considered the impact that could happen if we stick yet another gas station emitting those toxins into the atmosphere in and around that neighborhood. Do we know what that impact is going to be? And does or will applicant take the step to figure out if that's going to be a health hazard for us? So that's one point. Regarding the blasting, again, I'm not an engineer, blasting engineer, that kind of thing. So 25 Sweetland Avenue, where we live, is a 120-year-old house that was built on a stone foundation. It's not concrete or anything like that. Does that pose any additional, my question for the council is, does that pose any additional risk to us in the blasting?
Councilor Reynolds?
So, obviously, I'm not an engineer either, so I can't tell you yes or no, but I can tell you what they just said to us about this, is that if you were to allow them to take the pictures of your structure now, and any cracks and whatever is in there, they would have that. And then after any blasting is done, if there are additional cracks, then that would obviously be because of that, and then they would address it for you.
Yes, of course, I get that, but the idea would be, my question really is, I understand the insurance recovery aspect of it. My question is, are there any additional risk factors ahead of there being damage when you're talking about blasting?
I don't believe so.
Councilor Delicio?
I believe so.
So I think it's a very valid question and concern, and my understanding is that the fire department will do their own pre-blast survey prior to, and really
Good,
take
so they'll
all
come
of
around to
this.
the neighborhood houses and,
I'm not sure what the what the extent of that is, but as I stated a few moments ago, I went through it, myself very similarly within the last 2.5 years, and it's totally different than what it used to be. But I think that part of the engineering plan and the surveying and all of it kind of takes all that into account.
oh, great, so the survey will consider.
By no means am I an expert, sir,
Yeah.
but just kind of living through it myself recently.
Councilor Reynolds?
Plus, they'll be on site,
Correct.
the police and fire,
Okay,
during that time.
and the pre-blast engineers, because they'd be the ones I'd really want to have look at that, so, okay, all right, okay. Traffic on US 1, I mean, there's really not a ton to talk about. I have a minor concern, but who can predict the future, right? I don't pretend to be able to predict the future. One thing I can say is that traffic going down US 1 southbound, right now it's 2 lanes south, 2 lanes north, right? So what ends up happening is that if there happens to be a blockage in either one of those lanes because of turning vehicles, they have the other lane to turn into. So once you're south, once you're past like the AAA, I think takes some traffic. Once you're past Sweetland Avenue, which only people that stop to go in there are the people that live there, and maybe a guest or two now and again. Then it's a straight shot. If you have to pull out to get out from somebody turning into McDonald's, you just go at 40 miles an hour. So with that gas station sitting there, and again, I can't predict the future, but I can think of what might happen. If people are starting to frequently, and I think that was what, one vehicle every 4th minute is going to turn into that gas station. So what'll happen, what's going to happen if now people are stopping to turn left onto Barrows, they're turning left into McDonald's, and now they're stopped over here. What will happen to the traffic doing this? It's just a concern. I'm not a traffic study engineer. The traffic folks probably would be better to address it, but that's a concern that I can see possibly happening with that being there. So I have some more details to talk about the whole benzene thing, but I think I should probably just leave it with you for your consideration
You
to
can
kind of
leave it
drive
with
that.
You can actually give it to our administrative assistant, Virginia, if you want to go in around.
Sure.
She'll make copies for us.
If I'm going to leave something with you, let me leave you the copy of this is a study that was done by PhDs from the Department of Environmental Health Services of Columbia University and Johns Hopkins University, published in 2018 in the journal Science of the Total Environment regarding benzene emissions from gas stations.
Thank you.
And William, if you want to talk traffic while we have the traffic engineers here, you might want to grab their ear before they leave the building.
Sure.
They'll be able to answer some of your questions that you
Sure.
have and your concerns.
Absolutely.
Any questions?
Just one last comment.
Okay.
I feel I need to reiterate. These folks clearly are trying to be good neighbors to us. So hopefully we can get all this other stuff fixed.
Hope so.
And if the decision, I'm very anxious to actually I should ask, when will we hear back the results of any kind of study that is conducted that says that we will not have a health risk because of this next gas station going in?
Council Delacio, I don't think,
So again, what I would suggest, and that, because we got an answer back from the Conservation Commission as well. I think, and granted, that was for the local stormwater management permit, but I think that if they had overwhelming concern, I think they might have raised it. And again, I don't want to speak on behalf of them. I just want to be realistic in the expectation we set. I don't know that there'll necessarily be a study set forth by this body.
But the council will look into it?
we're going to read the information that you have given us,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Council Blair.
Thank you,
You're welcome.
Madam President. I personally was in the gasoline business for well over 50 years. I ran a garage down here on Pine Street. I was involved replacing those tanks twice, and each time the increase in accountability, engineering, it was a climb that I got out of the gas business because I couldn't afford to stay in it because of the regulations at the time. Those tanks that they're putting in the ground and the recovery system for the vapors and the benzene far exceeds anything I've ever seen. And I was involved in it up until, I think I pulled the tanks out probably 2005, 4, somewhere around there. I pulled them before I had a problem. But the recovery system for the vapors that's in place now is so advanced, that wouldn't be a concern of mine if I lived in the neighborhood at this point, to be honest with you.
Oh, good, well, thanks for that
And I
feedback.
sucked in a lot of fumes in 50 years.
Okay, thank
I
you.
think this new system that they have far exceeds your worries that they've accomplished that much. I feel comfortable with it.
Okay, all right, Madam
So
Chair,
if
one of the
that
members
makes
of
you
the council.
feel any better, I just.
Well, thanks, that is good to hear that, so, thank you.
Okay, Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much. Is there anybody else here to speak against? Is there anybody here to speak against? Is there anybody here to speak neither for nor against? Anyone here to speak neither for nor against? Counselor Dolan, do you see any need to keep this public hearing open?
I do not.
Okay, I'll declare that public hearing closed then. Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for your
Good
time.
night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving right along, Mr. Rod, would you please read the mayor's communication this evening?
February 18, 2020. Dear municipal councilors, I am pleased to announce the City of Attleboro's designation as a green community. Along with this designation, the city will be awarded a grant of approximately $244,370 once the grant application is completed with a list of potential projects.
Copy to all councilors.
On January 16, 2020, your honorable body voted to declare for disposition a 7,236 square foot area of a discontinued portion of Frank Mossberg Drive specified as Lot A, as shown on the plan entitled Street Discontinuance Plan of Land in Attleboro, Mass., prepared by John D. Bremser, PLS of Hancock Associates, 183 Center Street, Danvers, Mass. 01923, dated April 8, 2019. As you are aware, Moorings Inc. is interested in purchasing this property for further development of their site. Therefore, I recommend your honorable body accept the offer of $3,500 from Moorings Inc. Proceeds from the sale will be placed in Fund 2502, Sale of City Property Real Estate, which is restricted by Mass General Law. Use of these funds in the future would require approval of the mayor and a vote of the Honorable Municipal Council.
City property and claims, please.
I respectfully submit for your confirmation by the honorable body the following appointments to fill terms on the Youth Commission. Copies are in your packet. We have Sarah Rebello, Laura Santoro, and Owen Cobus.
Personnel and Human Services.
I respectfully submit for your confirmation by the honorable body the following reappointments to positions for the terms as indicated. Rose Lawson, Attleboro Redevelopment. Anthony Goen, Board of Assessors. Joseph Parent, Board of Fire Commissioners. Charles Oliver, Board of Library Trustees. Deborah Leach, Board of Park Commissioners. Greg Bartek, Board of Recreation Commissioners. Brian Hatch, Conservation Commission. Vicki Nason, Council on Aging. Marion Aspinall, Council on Aging. Mary Flaherty, Council on Human Rights. Joan Lesperance, Council on Substance Abuse Prevention. Susan Jensen, Disabilities Commission. Edward Stanton, Municipal Building Commission. Michael Tyler, Municipal Building Commission. Jerry Prickett, Municipal Building Commission. Ryan Delicio, Youth Commission, and Kara Davis, Youth Commission.
Personnel and Human Services Committee.
For your information, the following reappointments have been made to positions for which confirmation is not required for the term as indicated. Dominic Crochet, Cable Advisory Commission. Edward Stanton, Cable Advisory Commission. James Jones, Cable Advisory Commission. Elizabeth Fuller, Historical Commission. Brian French, Historical Commission. Gerald Turcott, Historical Commission, alternate member. And then Brian Hatch, Historical Commission, alternate member.
Thank you.
For your information, the Historical Commission has appointed Chris Frappier as an alternative member to fill an expired term. Term to expire February 2022. Council confirmation is not needed for this appointment.
Thank you.
I respectfully submit a communication from Superintendent of Park and Forestry, Derek Corsi, regarding the needs for funds to purchase a Ricoh IMC 300 color multifunction copier. This copier will replace a surplus machine received from the Council on Aging that is now beyond repair. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body to transfer $5,500 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to account Park Copier. Upon approval, the available balance in reserve fund for transfer to include any pending requests will be $209,430.59. Copies are in your packets.
Public Works Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from the Superintendent of Park and Forestry, Derek Corsi, regarding the need to replenish funds used to purchase LED bulbs for the Lloyd G. Balfour Riverwalk for an internal transfer was made. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body transfer $1,194.30 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to account Parks Supplies Ground. Upon approval, the available balance in the reserve fund for transfer to include any pending requests will be $208,236.29. Copies are in your packet.
Public Works Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Superintendent of Park and Forestry, Derek Corsi, regarding the need for funds in the equipment and vehicle supply accounts for the remainder of the fiscal year. Additional funding is needed due to unexpected repairs in FY20. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body to transfer $4,000 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to the following accounts. We have $2,000 to Park Supplies Equipment, $1,000 for Park Supplies Vehicles, and $1,000 for Park Supplies Grounds. Upon approval, the available balance in the reserve fund for transfer to include any pending requests will be $204,236.29. Copies are in your packet.
Public Works Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Fire Chief Scott T. LaChance regarding the receipt of a FY 2020 Student Awareness of Fire Education SAFE Grant and an FY 2020 Senior SAFE Grant from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts of approximately $8,393. The mission of the SAFE program is to provide fire and life safety education within the community, with this emphasis on educating children and seniors about fire and other related dangers. There is no matching requirement for this grant. In accordance with Chapter 1, Section 12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro, I hereby request your honorable body approve expending of such funds and any future grant amendments by the Attleboro Fire Department. Copies are in your packet.
Public Safety Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Fire Chief Scott T. LaChance regarding the need for funds due to an unexpected retirement that has resulted in an unbudgeted earned time payment. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body transfer $13,923.60 from Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to fire earned time payment. Upon approval, the available balance in the reserve fund for transfer to include any pending requests will be $190,312.69. Copies are in your packet.
Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Chief of Police Kyle P. Hegney regarding the need for funds to conduct mandatory medical examinations and purchase equipment and uniform for 6 new candidates. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body to transfer $10,200 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to the following: $4,200 for police medical screening and $6,000 for police uniforms. Upon approval, the available balance in the reserve fund for transfer to include any pending requests will be $180,112.69. Copies are in your packet.
Public Safety Emergency Management Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from Superintendent of Wastewater Thomas Hayes regarding the need for funds to purchase and install a vehicle lift at the wastewater treatment plant. This project is listed in the 2021 to 2025 Capital Improvement Program. The current 10,000-pound capacity vehicle lift has been in service since 1999 and is no longer serviceable, and due to safety concerns has been removed from service. The amount requested includes a 15% contingency. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body appropriate $13,145 from account wastewater enterprise fund retained earnings to account wastewater enterprise fund hydraulic lift. Copies are in your packet.
Public Works Committee, please.
I respectfully submit a communication from the Superintendent of Wastewater, Thomas Hayes, regarding the need for funds to conduct a study to determine the best option for future sludge disposal at the wastewater treatment facility. This project is listed in the 2021 to 2025 Capital Improvement Program. The project consists of 2 phases. The first phase is researching and evaluation potential sites for a new sludge-only land, and the second phase consists of developing an RFP for the city to use to bid and access alternative disposal methods. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body to appropriate $75,000 from account wastewater enterprise fund retained earnings to account wastewater enterprise fund landfill expansion. Copies in your packet.
I was going to put this into Public Works, but I'm gonna switch it over and we're gonna put it into capital improvements and city development. Please.
I respectfully submit a communication from the Chief of Police, Chief Kyle P. Hegney, regarding the need, to purchase a traffic data collection counter. Currently, the city requests the Southern Regional Planning and Economic Development District, SPRED, to deploy its traffic counter to assist in capturing speed and traffic data. Difficulties arise when SPRED is unable to deploy the counter because it is committed to other communities or when our request does not meet their criteria. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body to transfer $3,665 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to account police equipment. Upon approval, the available balance in reserve fund for transfer to include any pending requests will be $176,447.69. Copies in your packet.
Public Safety and Emergency Management Committee, please.
Enclosed, please find a letter from the Attleboro Contributory Retirement Board requesting my support and that of the Honorable Municipal Council for a home rule petition for one of its members, Walter L. Girton. Upon review of the letter, you will note it is in the position of the Attleboro Contributory Retirement Board that an administrative error of the board occurred when it allowed Mr. Girton to purchase call firefighter service. Due to other sections of Mass General Law, Chapter 32, this public safety retiree cannot return to active service for the required length of time to earn the credible service time now denied and taken away from the member. Thus, it is in the position of the retirement board that the only avenue to remedy the inequality to the retired member is through a home rule petition to restore his pension to which he believed he was entitled to on the date of his retirement. It is my understanding that the Attleboro Contributory Retirement Board, through its legal counsel and discussions with its oversight agency, PERAC, explore other options to remedy this matter. When none were determined, it voted unanimously to pursue this home rule petition. I am in support of this measure and now forward the matter to the honorable body of its consideration. Therefore, I respectfully submit a communication from the Attleboro Retirement Board regarding the need to approve a motion to petition the General Court to enact the following legislation designed to amend the provisions of Chapter 32, Section 4.2b and 4.2c solely as they apply to Walter L. Girton, to enable him to continue to receive his current monthly pension based upon 32 years of credible service as previously determined by the Retirement Board, and used to establish his present monthly pension calculation of $5,832.54, meaning and intending to have his statutory provision date back to November 17, 2017, the date of retirement, provided, and that the legislature may reasonably vary the form and substance of the requested legislation within the scope of the general public objectives of this petition. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body petition the general court to enact the following legislation. An act relative to the amendment of Mass General Law, Chapter 32, Section 42B and 42C, solely as they relate to the calculation of Walter L. Gerton's pension. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives in the General Court assembled and by the authority of the same as follows. Section 1. Notwithstanding the provisions of Mass General Law, Section 32, Chapter 32, Section 42B and 42C, or any other general or special law to the contrary, Walter L. Gerton shall continue to receive his pension based upon the 32 years of creditable service previously determined by the Retirement Board, resulting in a present pension calculation of $5,832.54 per month, meaning and intending to have the statutory provision date back to November 17, 2017, the date of his retirement. Section 2. This legislation is limited to the pension calculation of Walter L. Gerton and is not meant to otherwise alter the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 32. Section 3. This act shall take effect upon passage. Copies in your packet.
City Property and Claims Committee, please.
Sincerely, Paul Harrell, Mayor.
Are there any other communications this evening?
Yes, there are. City Court communication for February 18, 2020. A communication from February 10, 2020 from Justin Seto regarding the parking on Riverbank Road.
I'm gonna refer that to the Public Works Committee.
An application for scrap metal recycler / junk dealer license from Polarized New England Company LLC, doing business as Schneitzer Northeast at 136 Bacon Street, Attleboro.
I'm gonna refer that to the License Committee, please.
A soils management plan and release abatement measure plan, 1 Wall Street, submitted by Environmental Strategies and Management, Inc. at February 13, 2020 special council meeting.
That's just an FYI.
A communication sent in by Joe Drazak of Bacon Street voicing concern about a proposed marijuana establishment that is currently in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Zoning and Land Use Committee?
And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. With that, I'll entertain a motion. Does anybody need to take a break before recess? No, okay. I'd entertain a motion to go into the Committee of the Whole.
Second.
Thank you. We are now in the Committee of the Whole. Is there anybody here to speak on any city matter? Please come to the podium. Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. I don't have much of an audience, I guess. Everybody had enough of the gas station discussion.
Please state your name and your address.
My name is Joe Drazak. My address is 121 Westminster Avenue. Somehow my name just got read there. I didn't submit anything yet.
We received an email from you. We received emails from you?
That's not an email from me. It's from somebody else.
No, one came to President Cooper. From you, to President Cooper.
Yeah, it's forwarded though. It wasn't forwarded to the council as business.
No, but when President Cooper gets something through, it
Oh.
circled around to all of us.
Oh, okay,
that's
so
why.
that'll save some of the discussion then, so you'll know what I'm here for. It's been quite a few years since I've spoken before this body, as Councilor Blair will remember. However, this week I believe it's imperative to do so again. I'm a fourth-generation resident of South Attleboro. I live in the Bacon Street, Westminster, Lonsdale Avenue of the section of the city. I've lived there my whole life. When I came home from the hospital, my parents lived on Bacon Street and then moved building on Westminster, where my grandparents had both lived. It's always been a residential area, even prior to the creation of the zoning map. My neighbors, my family, and I are facing a momentous challenge this week due to the ordinances that this council created, and I'm here to raise awareness to yourselves and to other residents, and I ask for your support. Back in August, a application for a retail marijuana location was presented for the lot directly behind Walgreens, formerly the Rite Aid, but the Walgreens is operating there now. All of my neighbors and I have been speaking out against the proposal at the Zoning Board of Appeals hearing every month since, spending countless hours at hearings similar to this. As the time has passed, they have gone from presenting nothing to being graciously granted exceptions, excuses, and extensions of time for moving forward with a vote expected this Thursday, February 20th. With all of our raised concerns and further discussion with city officials, including Councilor Kobus, Police Chief Hegney, Mr. Arazian and his staff in planning, and some disappointing conversations with my own Ward 1 councilor and the mayor, my neighbors and I are essentially being told that this is a done deal before the vote is even taken. With the even close proximity of a residential zone with many houses and apartments, multiple school bus stops only feet away, and documented high traffic volumes increasing over the past decade. Especially with the closure of Branch Street and Cole Street Bridge into Pawtucket, it is not likely within what this body intended with the spirit of the ordinance of a situation like this occurring with only a 100-foot buffer from a residential area. But it is something that I am very really faced with potentially having to live for forever on Thursday. It is certainly a square peg in a round hole for this neighborhood. As you've heard a lot tonight, the area suffers greatly from traffic, especially in this section of South Attleboro. It's already unbearable, and on my dead-end street, I would have the head-on intersection with the facility, as Councilor Delicio has come and seen himself. It would be a nightmare of Rhode Island cars, as even Mr. Jacoby mentioned for the gas station. Imagine the circumstance for this, of Rhode Island cars coming out and in of a small little block to make their purchase, and then find every nook and cranny in the surrounding neighborhoods to use their purchase before going back to Pawtucket, Cumberland, or Central Falls to avoid an interstate incident where recreational marijuana is illegal in their state and against federal law if that border is crossed. The independent peer traffic study has found 36 critiques with the applicant paid-for traffic report. That just came out last week. Their numbers are certainly cooked as far as the applicant's presentation is concerned. If there are 36 points, that means that there are some serious issues with their presentation. My daughter and I did our own traffic study one afternoon, mimicking the times that they had stated, and had hundreds of more cars with only that 1 hour recorded. It doesn't seem like this location will service the majority of Attleboro, but rather out-of-state traffic. There is no benefit to the neighborhood, and only hardship and undue stress, burden on the surrounding areas. With the zoning ordinance, it is very clearly against these things. These points must not be overlooked. Within just 200 or 300 feet, the Bacon Street intersection of Route 1 is forced to deal with the scrapyard, Trinidad, SAS, the raids on that location, probably 3 or 4 times a year, the unlawful closure of Branch and Cole Street, as I've mentioned before, unbearable traffic, the expansion of the courtesy dealership, increased crime in that area. Just last week, the $15,000 worth of rims and tires were stolen from the courtesy dealership, the trash and dumping from the lottery stores and their patrons, the overrunning of unregistered vehicles in public ways, such as Turner Street, Westminster Avenue, from State Line Auto Brokers, as Councilor Dolan personally knows, the closure of the Lee's Pond Liddell Pool, and now this application. If you look at it from my perspective, I believe that my family, my neighbors, and I have ultimately been pretty patient and tolerant of all the things thrown down in this little corner of the city. But definitely it is an area that cannot bear another straw on the camel's back, and now we're being thrown a hay bale. Just because something is technically close enough to checking most of the boxes, it should be given consideration, and not always how this application has been handled. Because of these recent discussions in and around City Hall, I have been told repeatedly that city officials were being counseled by the city solicitor, and that it was now a liability to not allow this application to go through, and otherwise it would be against the law. That's not how I read the ordinance. I have pages and pages of documents here that speak to the opposite. So I was trying to gather clarification from the city solicitor herself as this application is being voted on Thursday. So I was advised to go to the mayor's office for this clarification. It resulted in me having, let's say, a firm, interactive discussion with the mayor as he approached me in the public hallway when I requested to make the appointment with the solicitor. Now, he and I have not seen eye to eye on some other issues in my area, and I believe now that he has no interest in my concerns to begin with, but it is apparently clear that that is the case. I understand that the residents themselves don't generally have the solicitor at their access or have the opportunity to speak with her, but with this hearing coming, I thought that it was imperative to get answers. The mayor proceeded to say that I was impossible to please and requesting special treatment. It's coming and there was no reason for the city to oppose it, was his exact words and quote, and shortly stated it actually in email and written form, which I will be distributing to you for your own reference. There was no reason for the city to oppose it. Well, I have a great many reasons to oppose it, and I believe that others do, and I fear that the decision may be stolen from the people and the residents are in jeopardy of getting steamrolled. I know that the mayor has opposed me previously on neighborhood issues, but he should still listen to concerns and be open to all viewpoints, not make dictatorial decisions. It essentially came down to him closing the door on me and saying, if I didn't like the decision, quote, to get a lawyer, it would be expensive and I would lose, but that get an attorney and sue the city, unquote. This is not the representation I believe as a tax-paying citizen I deserve, and I now have taken it personally to make sure that this proposal fails. I now strongly feel that my rights and that the rights of the citizens and the rights of due process are now in danger. He followed up immediately with, which I guess you have received as an email, with his reply, and I fear that a devastating precedent has been set. I have great concern now, based on this instance with myself personally on Friday, that there is a problem with the way that the boards and appointments for city boards and commissions are potentially no longer truly independent. I think that you agree with this also. Because of the very recent unilateral ousting of Joe Caponegro, I am forced to believe that other volunteer appointees may feel pressure to do the mayor's bidding in the same fear of that fate. I think that this could now be a very skewed position against the residents and the voices of those who this would affect most, and is being imposed upon if the mayor so wishes. I just wanted to make you aware that I have spread the word with other neighbors, started a Facebook page, been in contact with and in the newspaper, spoken to everyone who I can think of to help oppose this, and I truly don't think the council meant for this use to be in this type of location. As Councilor DeSimone had asked earlier how far 100 feet is from a house for blasting, can you imagine just from here to that video board away from a bus stop where students go, my children go? The infrastructure of the industrial parks could definitely more handle this well-documented operation than my little corner of the city and that which I share with my neighbors, which is already prone to traffic, accidents, crime, and more. This really comes down to the mayor and his agenda at any cost, as we had discussed this with him previously. The cost is my quality of life, that of my family, property value, safety of those in the neighborhood, and the current residents. I am asking respectfully for your support to deny this proposal, as it does not meet all the criteria spelled out in the Zoning Board of Appeals ordinance, and the politics and money are coming before reason and safety. Nothing says that this needs to be approved. I believe the employees of the city and its volunteers may be afraid to do their jobs and to do their jobs correctly. I have heard that this has been, I know that that's the case because it has been revealed to me personally since the events that have taken place within this month. If I were on an appointed board, I would be nervous for myself. That is an injustice to the residents, for those who do their jobs, and for the city as a whole, because there are some good people out there. At first, there was Beagle Club Road, and I said nothing. And then they came for Joe Cap, and it got my attention. And now they're coming from my neighborhood, and I just hope that it's not too late. As a longtime city youth coach of boys soccer and for my son and girls basketball for my daughter, who both attend Coelho and stand at that bus stop, and for those that stand on Bacon Street, who are my neighbor's children every day, I try to instill them individually and in their teams the values, drive, and passion for their sports, pride in their city, and the determination to do what is right all the way to the end. I am a passionate person. I'm a passionate husband, father, son, coach, friend, and coworker that believes in fairness, and that the right thing and common sense should overall win the day. I am passionate, yes I am. I am passionate about my neighborhood. That is where I have always lived. My family, also passionate. Water, property value, and quality of life. The months of overhanging stress, of this application, I believe, has started to take a toll on my neighbors and myself. But I believe that we can keep on going, knowing that if we don't stay on top of it now, we will be trapped in our own homes and even trapped on our own street. It will never slow down no matter what anyone says, because the constant influx of Rhode Island looking for pockets in our neighborhoods after their purchases will continue to be a problem. If the toothpaste is ever let out of the tube, it is impossible to put it back in. The current ordinances are barely enforced now, and I have no reason to believe that anything will change due to the track record that I have personally witnessed over the years. Nova Farms already has been given approval for one of the 5 licenses in the city. None of the applicants are from Attleboro for this proposal, and the land would only be leased. The intent of a special permit or a variance is only if every other use has been exhausted. There are other uses for this land. I have actually spoken in favor of other uses for it to be a used carriage lot for state line auto brokers, because parked cars make good neighbors. They don't move, they don't create hazards, they don't smoke marijuana, and they don't create traffic. And now, in closing, I am here tonight because the council met tonight, and it's the only opportunity that I will have prior to Thursday for the Zoning Board of Appeal, where my wife and I will be speaking, along with a lot of the other of our neighbors. My point tonight is to come and try to garner additional support from you as the writers of the ordinance to put into the common sense and human aspect of what you have actually imposed, and see how it would not only affect me, but affect my children and the neighborhood. I ask for your consideration also for the occasion of Friday's interaction that I had, and request for swift action or injunction of some kind to prevent the mayor from doing more harm to good citizens residents who would be hurt by a negative vision. I do not believe that things should be decided before the vote, and if allowed, you'll come and support us in opposition to this proposal on Thursday. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Joe? Council Blair?
Thanks, Joe, for coming. I agree with some of your comments. I'm not happy with the marijuana system from the start. I've been opposed to it. And I believe when we wrote we wrote the conditions of that marijuana ordinance, or wrote the ordinance, we didn't intend it to be in neighborhoods. It wasn't my intention. And I'm sure there's some sitting here that it wasn't in your intentions either. I'm familiar with the area. It is a neighborhood. It probably zoned industrial, and they got around that end of it. But I don't think it's a proper place to have one myself. I appreciate you coming. We have some of the same concerns with the administration and how it acts. But I'll be there Thursday night for you, Joe.
I appreciate that very much.
Joe, whatever you've presented to the council, what you just read, if you wouldn't mind leaving a copy with...
This is the copy for her, and this is the copy for you guys of the
Okay, so
actual
she'll-
email.
Yep.
I didn't get a chance to do, I'll drop
That's
that,
okay.
I'll bring it around the corner.
Great, thank you.
And if you had just a minute and 50 seconds, I know the video board doesn't have the computer with it, I didn't realize that, I brought my thumb drive, but if you would give me the extra second, if this gentleman didn't mind, and you didn't mind yourself, to just watch a quick video on my Channel 10 news article, it's a short clip.
I don't know, how would you go about doing that?
I will I'll do it right here, and you can hopefully
And
see
the
it,
pun-
and
The
at least
public's
hear
gotta
it.
be able to see it, though. I don't think we can do that.
What's it of, Mr. Could he describe it?
Yeah.
Well, it says everything I needed to say.
'Cause you
It's
do-
about the Fall River location. I went to the Fall River location on a couple of occasions, and the line goes around the block. It's right where Route 24 and 81 meet, Adamsville there, the Tiverton line. You could throw a baseball from here to Tiverton, as you can from my location, where this will be by the ETC, to Pawtucket, or Cumberland the other way. And it looks like a dignitary's funeral. Looks like when unfortunately there's a public servant who passes away, and everybody goes to the funeral, and the line of people is lined up around the building, and there's cars everywhere. That's what I thought it was. The first time I went there, I thought it was a funeral home. I thought somebody important had passed away.
So
And
you're
that's
gonna-
what it was. It was the line for people to get in
Excuse me,
from
Joe.
Tiverton.
You're going to present that, I hope, to, because
I-
since
it-
this is not before this honorable
right,
body,
right.
presented on Thursday night to
Yes.
the zoning board.
I have a similar presentation. It'll be basically the same spiel. I've given it many months, time after time. But I will have I'll speak to Lauren in advance and get the computer set up so that it'll be visible.
Good, that's
Because
a
they're the
good
ones who
idea.
make the decision. And maybe, I'm going off base because we've gotten very little feedback from the actual voting members. I know it's 3 residents. I've known them a long time. They've been, diligent servants of the city for all of these years. And I just wouldn't want to see their decision-making ability swayed at all by an overall agenda or vision by somebody who ultimately has the power to give and remove their jobs. And I saw that on YouTube when I watched this hearing. And, President Cooper and the mayor got into some very heated words over what people volunteering should be subject to. And I think that the residents are subject to a lot of the same issues. I know that this body, I didn't vote for the marijuana approval. I wish I had paid more attention when this body was doing it. I was very busy at the time. It's not easy to follow every meeting, but 100 feet is very close. It's very close for a number of reasons. And this crescent of Bacon Street from Route 1, where Vista Donut is, down the hill to Bacon, to West Carpenter, to Cumberland, it's just going to be a thoroughfare for Rhode Island to purchase their marijuana and then find my dead-end street, Lonsdale, go down by Cumberland Engineering, under the bridge where the body shops are, in the neighborhoods by Cranberry, and on the other side before they go back to Rhode Island. You can't take something that you buy in Massachusetts that it's illegal in Rhode Island, and they're not going to take the chance to do that. There's already hit-and-run people who come in from Rhode Island. I almost got into an accident with the guy a couple months ago who came in and robbed the Cumberland Farms before it had moved. It was either that or the other. I'm sorry, it was the US 1 gas next to Lee's Pond. They robbed the guy, and he was going 80 miles an hour down Route 1 south to get back into Pawtucket. And I was taking the left on Bacon Street, and he didn't stop, and good thing I did, because he was going right through the red light, and I had the green arrow, and he was trying to get out of Dodge. And that's what's going to happen. You're going to have these hit-and-run purchases from Rhode Island. And I don't know if, you could say that, okay, yes, is it an industrial zone? Yes, but does it create undue hardship on the surrounding area? Does it, and that's what the ordinance says, and does it create undue traffic? Does it make it a public nuisance? Does it impose things on the neighborhood, which is current, which is existing, like the bus stop, like all these other situations? Does it put more burden on that? And that should be a reason, and I'm fighting that to be the reason, along with their bogus traffic study, that you should be able to deny it. And for my council person, for the people I've talked to around the city who have, I've talked to the police chief, and I can't, get into specifics with him. I've talked to Gary Arasian. They're trying to tell me how I can live with it. Well, you can't live with it because that area can't support it. It can't. It shouldn't have to. There are industrial parks that are empty. Go put it over there. I would be even happy if you took the application fee, transferred it for nothing, and let them apply it to another location. So if they could save their application fee, they could build the exact same building somewhere else. It's workable. I think that the ordinance itself is very technical, and I know Thursday they're going to have another one with Dickens Street, and all the Pawtucket residents aren't going to want that because it's close to a residential area. They're using that as a grow facility, but it's within 100 feet of residence use.
And again,
I know, wrong body. I know, but you guys made the ordinance.
we can't, yes,
And
we
that's
did.
what Mr. Arasian told me. He says, go talk to
Created
the
it,
council.
voters voted for it, and, yeah.
So if there was a way to interject that, because it's going to be a pop-up problem everywhere. If you look at the zoning map, 100 feet is not very far. It's not very far. So
Any questions?
I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you very much.
So if any of you can make it Thursday, I'll see you there.
Thank you. Is there anybody else here to speak to the committee of the whole? Anybody have anything to talk about? Okay, then I would entertain a motion to arise from
Second.
committee of the whole. Thank you. We are now out of committee of the whole, and do we need to take a brief recess, or can we go right into reading committee reports?
Say Paula's moved.
Okay, I'm gonna do it. Just moving right along. so we're gonna start with committee reports, starting with Mr. Counselor Blair, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Reporting public safety and emergency management. I have two motions this evening. I move to transfer $16,500 from account 1124100-578300 citywide reserve fund for transfer to account 1220100-582510 fire renovations to replace funds used for for sewer pipe replacement at the Twin Village Fire Station.
Second.
Thank you. I have a friendly amendment. There was a Scribner's error last week when this was brought forward. That project is not done, and the money we're asking for isn't to replace money, it's to replace the sewer pipe. So I'll read the motion as amended. I move to transfer $16,500 from account 1124100-578300 citywide reserve fund for transfer to account 1220100-582510 fire renovations to fund the replacements of a sewer pipe at the Twin Village Fire Station.
Second.
Any comments?
We had them all last week. The big hang-up was, the words were in the wrong place last week, but, I think that's been straightened out. Any questions from my fellow councilman?
Great,
Fine, Katie.
wonderful, thank you. With that, we're gonna do a roll call vote, beginning with Counselor Holmes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Acting President Kate Jackson?
Yes,
9 yeas, no nays.
Thank you.
motion passes.
From the docket of February 18th, 2020, I move to approve the mayor's request to replenish funds used to repair damaged PPE and new PPE equipment in the amount of $17,300 and transfer from account 1124100-578300 citywide reserve fund for transfer to the following: $7,500 to account 1220100-558204 firefighting fighting supplies, $4,800 to account 1220100-558211 fire Scott Air Pack, $2,500 to account 1220100-548020 fire tire and batteries, and $2,500 to account 1220100-548030 fire vehicles.
Second.
This money is just to replace money that's been taken out of these accounts and put it back into the accounts because the necessity to transfer it to get that equipment up and squared away before it could come before this body.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? This also requires a roll call vote. We're gonna begin with Counselor Blair.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Acting President Jackson?
Yes,
9 yeas, no nays.
motion passes.
Thank you. Before I release the floor, upcoming is the Emmett Lockett Memorial Fund that we have every year, the Recreation Department and some of us put on to help fund local children and young adults less fortunate than many of our children. Lets them go to different events, help support them. It's in honor of Emmett Larkin, who was a fond believer in you didn't leave any kids behind. Emmett constantly kicked in out of his own pocket to make sure that that kid sitting at the back of the room got on the bus when they went somewhere, you know, kicked in the money himself. He's greatly missed, and this fund has done nothing but help the youth of Attleboro. It's a great thing to give to and show your support for the children of Attleboro, the less fortunate. So it's going to be held the Attleboro Elks, March 14th, 6:30 to midnight. They have a silent auction. They have the gifts are unbelievable that Leo Johnson brings in, and they auction off and run raffles. And I haven't missed one. It's always been a good time, and it's for a good cause. So if you can find time on March 14th, it's an evening well spent for a good cause.
Thank you. Would you like to call for a committee meeting?
Yeah, I'd like to call for a committee meeting next week at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Councilor Blair. Councilor DeSimone.
Yes, thank you, President Jackson. I have only one motion tonight. I would entertain a motion to strike the following. I'm reporting for the Transportation and Traffic Committee, forgive me. I entertain a motion to strike the following. From the docket of January 7, 2020, a communication from Charles Valugo regarding the city center and the need for a stop sign near the Stone Bridge.
Second.
Thank you. I think I've mentioned this a couple of times. The yield sign is up. It's been up for a few weeks, so just trying to get some stuff off the agenda.
Hooray.
Questions, comments? No, good.
Okay. We'll have a roll call vote beginning with Councilor Holmes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Acting President Jackson?
Yes.
9 yeas, no nays.
Thank you. That's all the business I have. I'd like to call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Conti, welcome.
Yes, thank you. Happy to be here. Reporting for Capital Improvement City Development Committee. I have 5 motions this evening. On the docket of February 18, 2020, I move to approve the request of the mayor to appropriate $90,000 from account 1000-35900, undesignated fund balance, free cash general government, to account 1133-1000-585010, budget and administration, new computer equipment for the MIS department.
Second.
So, this piece of equipment has been on the capital improvement plan for 2 years, and it seems being a critical device in the operation of our intranet, and I highly endorse its passage. That concludes my comments.
Great. Any other comments? With that, we're going to have a roll call vote, starting with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Acting President Jackson?
Yes.
9 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Ms. Vice President. From the docket of January 21st, 2020, I move that in accordance with the Attleboro City Charter, Section 6-3D, to adopt the following resolution to adopt the capital improvement program for fiscal years 2021 through 2025. Resolution, City of Attleboro Capital Improvement Program, fiscal years 2021 through 2025. Whereas the Home Rule Charter, approved by the people of Attleboro in November 1973, requires the submission of a 5-year capital improvement program at least 6 months prior to the last day of each fiscal year. And whereas the charter calls for a yearly adoption by resolution of the council at least a 5-year capital improvement program for the city. And whereas the charter calls for a public hearing, which was held by the council on February 4th, 2020. And whereas our municipal finance management reflects a plan to maintain a capital improvement line item in the budget upon state certification of free cash, therefore the council adopts the capital improvement program for 2021-2025.
Second.
Any comments?
I do. This is short and sweet.
My committee reread the charter and came to the conclusion that the purpose of the capital improvement meetings was to adopt the capital improvement plan. And in the process, we reacquaint ourselves with all of the department issues, particularly the urgent issues. And this year, had a plan of pushing a tight schedule, so we had a very tight schedule between the time the books came out and the time we had the public hearing and the time we had the meetings, that I tried to encapsulate all that as quickly as I could so that my committee could sit together and write a meeting, a resolution for the council for tonight. Thinking that if we could get a resolution through the council tonight on February the 15th, that we are probably 15 days before a budget submission or longer from the mayor. And that this is what our forefathers intended, to be able to have a review of the capital improvement plan, adopt it, understand what's coming down the road, then work on a budget. So during our review process, the mayor informed us that we had no money. I think that was in the paper, and that we would we'd have access to free cash after October when the state certifies. So we're taking a different tack this year. Rather than coming up with a list of things that we would like to see funded before the budget comes out, we're going to sit back and work on the budget, and then sometime around August, summertime, reconvene with the book that we're already familiar with, perhaps bring in some more department heads that we haven't already talked to, and come up with a list then, before the state certifies the free cash.
Good plan.
And I hope that pleases everybody, and that concludes my comments.
Thank you very much. Any other comments?
I have one.
Please,
Well, two.
Counselor.
Number one, I wanted to say that Mr. Arazian did a great job getting the book. That's the first time I reviewed it. But I also want to tip my hat to Councilor Conti. I had the pleasure of sitting at one of his capital improvement meetings, and I've only been on the council a short time, but he's proven to be a professional, and I'm learning a lot just by sitting next to you, so well done, sir.
Thank you, Counselor.
Madam Vice President, I'm so happy that you mentioned Mr. Arazian's name, because I have been pushing for 10 years to get the capital improvement plan done on time, and this is the first time in my career as a counselor that it was. And that's no small feat to get the administration to move something as massive as the capital improvement plan. I've told Mr. Arazian I am so proud of him, I could kiss him. And he knows that I am truly thrilled, and we look forward to working together in the future.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. It also requires a roll call vote, and we're going to begin with Council Holmes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Acting President Jackson?
Yes.
9 yeas, no nays.
Motion passes. Councilor Conti, if I could interrupt you just for
Yes.
1 minute. If you would like to, we discuss this because we didn't know if you want to make it here in time, but if you would like to just present the next two motions as is, and you don't have to read them into, because you read them last week in committee, and if you'd like to proceed that way, I will offer that up to you.
Thank you. I will proceed that way because they're very boring and very redundant. So, from the docket of January 21st, 2020, I move to approve the following loan order that $6,900,000 be appropriated for design, permitting, bidding, construction oversight for the Attleboro Public Library building at 74 North Main Street.
Second. We have it seconded. Any comments?
So, Madam Vice President, we've been talking about this for at least 3 years, maybe 5 years. And, we've been out there in the cold, standing on the roof, and we've had our pictures taken on the roof. I still have them in my phone. We've been blessed that nothing catastrophic has happened to that roof since it got peeled with the ballast. We're blessed that the library staff is patient enough to put up with a trailer outside the building, blowing cold air into the building rather irregularly. And I think all the people of Attleboro feel that this is one of Attleboro's crown jewels. So I am thrilled, pleased, and happy to present to the council a motion for this loan order, and that concludes my comments.
Good. Any other comments from anyone? Please, Councilor Delicio.
Thank you. So we've talked about this for several years. We've kicked the proverbial tomato can down the street. The library is a focal point of the city, and as we've seen with the old high school on County Street, it's not always easy to sell one of these buildings. We own the building, so I know a lot of people are like, well, let's just sell it. And we thought about it, we looked at it, we talked about it, we did studies. The reality is, these are repairs that have to get done. This project's been vetted by our city auditor, Deb Gould, the treasurer, Laura Gignac, and Barry Lacasse prior to his departure. So as is common with these sort of projects, the financial teams get together and they discuss what can we handle, what can we not handle, can the budget absorb this? And I think with the debt management, with the debt services rather, debt services is always part of the budget. I suspect it's going to be part of this budget again in fiscal 21. We'll have debt that continuously falls off, which makes it a little easier to absorb. I just think that this is, at this point, a project that we have to undertake.
Thank you, Councilor Delicio. Any other comments?
Yeah,
Councilor
briefly. I'm, as someone who just got off the library board and sat for several years and heard all of these discussions, on behalf of myself and my former colleagues as trustees, I greatly appreciate the work of the mayor, the MBC, and this body in finally moving this project along. I'm a huge library lover. It's a huge asset to the city. So to me, this is all upside. This is wonderful news. Thank you.
Anyone else? With that, we'll have a roll call vote, starting with Councilor Blair, please.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Acting President Jackson?
Yes.
9 yeas, no nays.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. From the docket, January 21st, 2020, I move to approve the following loan order. That $3,900,000 appropriated for the permitting, bidding, construction oversight, and construction costs associated with the remodel, reconstruction, and the extraordinary repairs to the roof of both Brennan Middle School located at 320 Rapidville Drive in Mass, and the identical Warm Sutter Middle School located at 300 Locust Street in Attleboro, Mass.
Second.
Any comments?
Yes, riding upon Council Delicio's comments, I believe that we're probably running close to the end of being able to do some of these bondings. And I really appreciate the joint meetings that the Capital Improvement Committee has had with the Budget and Administration Committee. And I look forward to more of those because the learning is incredible. It's very specific, which makes it much more meaningful. But this loan order request is for 2 roofs that have been leaking for 12 years. And in those 12 years, additional decay has occurred to the surrounding areas to an extent that we really don't know how much that is until we open up the roofs and get in there and fix it. But I find those entranceways to both of those schools to be appalling because of the spalling and the missing, it's just a terrible way to introduce yourself to a school, particularly where some of our other schools are so attractive. And I wish that things had gone differently in the construction of those schools, but we can't go back. And now I fear that if we don't do this now, that number's going to be much, much bigger in the future. And that concludes my comments.
Councilor Delicio.
Thank you. Council Conti, thank you for your work. I feel the same way. We are in the midst of working for another one in mid-March. What I will say is, and correct me if I'm wrong, through your committee back probably 4 or 5 years ago, we put kind of a Band-Aid fix on the cow walls in both of these schools.
No, they were in Coelho and Studley.
I think it was Studley and Brennan perhaps, because
Okay.
I think it might have been.
It was definitely Studley.
Right, and I think Brennan at the same time for the same reasons. And now, again, this is kind of like home ownership, where things happen, you have to take it. Right now, it's city ownership, and we all have to kind of step up, because the more and more that we kick things down the road in a city that's aging, with aging infrastructure, aging buildings, the cost is just gonna go up. And I think, you're spot on, Council, when you talk about that window for bonding is closing, especially with the high school project happening. So I think that we're coming into a very critical budget season as we're coming out of a very critical capital improvements. So I think this is a need to do very much as the library was.
Thank you, Councilor Delicio. Any other comments? Oh, Councilor Blair.
I'm glad to see I have two fellow councilmen that they realize that we're getting to the end of our ability to borrow. These past two projects that Mr. Conti brought out are necessary and overdue, but we can't keep borrowing, and we're reaching that point. I'm in favor of both of them getting done, but we've kicked it down the road and it's cost us a lot of money to do them now rather than 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and whatnot. Both those schools were very poorly designed and built. It's another case, I've said it right along, you get what you pay for, low bidder, not following up quick enough when the faults were first identified. I'm glad to hear you say it, Mr. Conti and Mr. Delicio. I think we've reached the limit, and I don't know about anybody else on this council, but the taxpayers out there are saying enough's enough. Enough's enough. You know, they supported a school, a small majority of the voters supported a school, but they had enough. So we've got to start putting the clamps on, and hopefully this budget season coming up, we take a real strong look at how we're spending taxpayers' dollars. Ends my comments. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Well said.
Thank you. Have a roll call vote, starting with Councilor Holmes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Acting President Jackson?
Yes.
9 yeas, no nays.
Motion passes.
Thank you. If I move to strike the following. From the docket of October 22nd, 2019, the request of the mayor to appropriate $460,000 from the undesignated fund balance free cash general government to the following funds. $280,000 to fund 3429 Hyman Find Hill Roberts gym floors, and $180,000 to fund 3428 elementary school parking lots.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments?
So I'm going to urge my councils to strike this motion because, number one, it's two big projects together, which I don't like. I kind of like to separate those, and so in the future, you won't see this again. We'll make sure of that. But additionally, Councilor Waterman and I have spent some time with the school department on the Hyman Fine gym floors, and we're together in our thinking that they're taking the wrong approach. And it's difficult to say, just listening to Councilor Blair, but they're looking at a short-term, they were looking at a short-term 10-year, gonna have to replace them again situation, and neither one of us could stand for that. In the case of the paving of elementary school parking lots, I felt, and I was told, that we probably could do with some better information. So I've been working with Michael Tyler to get specifics on how these projects are going to get done and what the real cost is going to be. And when I have all that together, and I have all the gym floor data together, and not until, you'll hear from this again later. So I urge you to strike the motion. That concludes my comments.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilor?
Yes, I would just like to, for those listening in on the TV or watching, just like to say that this does not mean that we're not going to go forward on the gym floors. I trust that our committee definitely will, but we'll have better built floors, perhaps, than we would, but they'll last a lot longer. And in the end, we'll be saving. So, with that, I'm with my comments.
Thank you, Council Waterman. Any other comments? This also requires a roll call vote, and we will begin with Council Blair. Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Acting President Jackson?
Yes.
9 yeas, no nays.
Motion passes.
That concludes the business that the Capital Improvement and City Development has to bring before the council this evening. We look forward to a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you, Council Conti. Council Waterman.
Reporting from the Personnel and the Human Services Committee from the docket of February 18th, 2020. I move to transfer $1,650 from the account 112-41000-578300, Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to account 1220100-514036, Fire Prior Year Sick Leave Incentive, to pay for department dispatchers the contractual sick leave incentive from fiscal year 19.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments?
The only comment, we talked about this last week, is that there has been, this money is to refund, well, not refund, they were never actually paid that amount of money when they first moved over to the fire department in 2018. And that, for some reason, that was overlooked, because they're on a different fiscal year than the rest of the firefighters. So, simply to keep them up to date with the money they should have had.
Any other comments? This requires a roll call vote, and we'll begin with Councilor Holmes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Acting President Jackson?
Yes.
9 yeas, no nays.
Motion passes.
And from the docket of February 18th, 2020, the city has received the fiscal year 20 municipal ADA improvement grant from the Massachusetts Office on Disability for $60,000. These funds must be expended no later than June 30th, 2020. Therefore, I move to approve expending of such funds and any future grant amendments.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments?
Well, we also talked about this last week. We received this grant, $60,000. It's something that we have to act upon immediately almost, and be finished with a consultant that we'll be hiring by the middle of June. And this will improve the disability access for the city buildings.
Thank you very much. Any other comments, questions? Great. This requires a roll call vote, and we'll begin with Councilor Blair.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Acting President Jackson?
Yes.
9 yeas, no nays.
Motion passes.
From the docket of February 18th, 2020, I move to approve the appointment of Barry Lacasse, 3 Zerrick Drive, Attleboro, to the Attleboro Contributory Retirement Board, term to expire February 2023.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments?
Not necessary, I don't think at this point.
Thank you.
We're glad he's coming.
Any other comments? This requires a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
From the docket of February 18th, 2020, I move to approve the appointment of Stephanie Gray, 66 Orange Street, to fill an unexpired term on the Council on Human Rights, term to expire February 2022.
Second.
Any comments?
And again, we have an excellent volunteer to help us with our Council on Human Rights.
Any other comments, concerns? This requires a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
And, yes, finally, from the docket of February 18th, 2020, I move to approve the following appointments to fill unexpired terms on the Youth Commission. And they're all, well, they're all expiring the same time, so I'll read the names. Cole Bender, can't pronounce it, excuse me. Joe Pacheco, Tyler Rocio, and Emily Olson, all terms to expire February 2022.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments?
We're just delighted that these 4 young people are helping us out,
Great.
and we thank you for working with us.
Any comments? This requires a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
And that concludes the business for tonight of the Human Services Personnel Committee. We'll meet next appropriate time.
Thank you. Moving right along to my other side. Counselor Delicio, please. I know you have both for zoning, no, you have for the tax abatement, right?
Tax abatement.
Yeah,
So I'll do that one first, if you don't
sure,
mind.
not at all.
Reporting for the Special Committee for Senior Tax Abatement Review from the docket of November 5th, 2019. I move to delete section 7-.86 of the city's revised ordinances in its entirety and would request a waiving of the reading.
Absolutely, granted.
And replace with 7-8.6, property owners who are eligible for a property tax exemption under MGL 59, Section 5, Clause 41C shall, upon application, receive a 33 1/3% exemption on solid waste fee.
Second.
Any comments?
None. This was discussed last week in committee.
Okay, this requires a roll call vote. Beginning with Counselor Holmes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Acting President Jackson?
Yes.
9 yeas, no nays.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That is all the business I have tonight for the Special Committee for Tax Abatement Review, and would like to call for a committee meeting in the next appropriate time.
Thank you, Counselor Delicio.
Thank you. And reporting for Budget and Appropriations Committee from the docket of February 18th, 2020, I move to transfer $408.82 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to account clerk overtime to pay water department employees overtime for the annual rabies clinic.
Second.
Thank you. As discussed last week in committee, this is to pay for training, as the gentleman from the water department who has been doing these rabies clinics is retiring. So this is just to get his replacement trained.
Thank you very much. Any comments? This requires a roll call vote, and we'll begin with Counselor Blair.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Acting President Jackson?
Yes.
9 yeas, no nays.
Motion passes.
Thank you. From the docket of February 18th, 2020, I move to appropriate $127,195.43 from account undesignated fund balance free cash general government to account school appropriation Medicaid to fund the municipal sharing agreement.
Second.
Comments?
Yeah, this is something we do annually to honor the memorandum of understanding between the schools and the city, something we've been doing since 1999.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, concerns? This requires a roll call vote, and we'll begin with Counselor Holmes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Acting President Jackson?
Yes.
9 yeas, no nays.
Motion passes.
Thank you, and that is all the business for budget and appropriations, and I would like to request the meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Dolan.
Reporting for Public Works Committee from the docket of February 18th, 2020, I move to transfer $3,621.26 from account Water Enterprise Fund Reserve Fund for transfer to account Water Enterprise Fund taxes to other communities for the water department to pay real estate taxes to Plainville.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments?
None. This was discussed in committee.
Thank you. Any other comments? This requires a roll call vote. We'll begin with Counselor Holmes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Acting President Jackson?
Yes.
9 yeas, no nays.
Motion passes. Thank you very much.
That's all the business for the Public Works Committee. I'd like to call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you very much, Council Dolan. Did you want to call for one for license?
Oh, and license, I have no business for the License Committee and would like to call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you very much, Council Dolan. Council Reynolds.
Thank you. Reporting for the City Property and Claims Committee from the docket of February 18th, 2020, I move to accept the generous donation of $300 in Stop and Shop cards from a Veterans of Foreign Wars Post 115 to the Veterans Office.
Second?
Thank you. Any comments?
No, we've talked about this.
Any other comments? A voice vote is required. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
From the docket of February 18th, 2020, I move to declare surplus and available for disposition the following office furniture from the Elections Office. One office chair, it is in good condition.
Second?
Any comments?
No.
Okay. This requires a roll call vote. We will begin with Council Blair.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Acting President Jackson?
Yes.
9 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
From the docket of February 18th, 2019, I move to declare surplus for trade-in value the following road maintenance trucks, machines from the Department of Public Works. 2 1997 GMC Sierras, they're in very poor condition. A 2004 Elgin Pelican sweeper, also in very poor condition, and a 1994 Ford backhoe 655D, also in very poor condition.
Second?
Thank you. Motion is in order. Any comments?
I think there's a Scribner's error. Shouldn't this be February 18th, 2020? I'm sorry, from the docket of February 18th, 2020.
Oh,
May I correct that?
yes, you may.
Shall I read the whole thing again?
I don't think that's
No,
necessary.
I don't think it's necessary. Okay. So we are in the roll call vote, I believe. Thank you.
President Reynolds.
Just reminding where we are.
We'll have a roll call vote beginning with Council Holmes,
Ms.
please.
Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Delicio?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Acting President Jackson?
Yes.
9 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you very much.
So that is all the business for City Property and Claims Committee, and I would like to call a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you.
Council Holmes.
Thank you. I'm reporting for Ordinance Election Legislators Matters Committee. I only have one motion this evening, and it's just to call for a public hearing. So from the docket of February 18th, 2020, I move to call for a public hearing on March 17th, 2020 at 7 p.m. for the following ordinance amendment. Amend Section 18-1.8 Permits and Conditions of the Local Wetlands Protection Ordinance.
Second.
Thank you.
Any comments? This
This is
requires a roll call.
Oh, no
Oops.
comments.
Yeah.
This is just calling for public hearing.
This requires a roll call. I'm sorry, voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, that's all the business, and I'll call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time. And I'm also reporting for zoning and land use. No business this evening, but we'll call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you very much. That ends committee reports. We don't have anything under old business, but we do have a few things under new business. With that, I'd like to bring the attention to Council Waterman.
Yes, under new business. I move to refer to the appropriate committee for study and recommendation. To confirm the appointments of Mayor Paul Heroux and Council President Mark Cooper as representatives of the city on the sturdy, that should be sturdy, Memorial Hospital Board of Managers, subject to the confirmation of the mayor. Terms to expire December 2021.
Second?
And I think this is self-explanatory.
Thank you. I'm gonna, we need a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm gonna refer that to Personnel and Human Services Committee.
And I also
Go ahead.
move to refer to the appropriate committee for study and recommendation to elect Virginia Stewart, no longer Stewart, 101 South Avenue, Attleboro, as administrative assistant to the municipal council for a term of 2 years, term to expire February 2022.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments?
This is a no-brainer in my mind.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and I'm referring that also to Personnel and Human Services Committee.
Okay, and third, I also refer the following matters to the appropriate committee for study and recommendation: to elect Deborah Gould of 386 South Washington Street, North Attleboro, as auditor for a term of 2 years, term to expire February 2022.
Second.
You?
Second. I get the second.
Any comments? Please, go ahead. Council Conti.
So, Madam Vice President, Deborah Gould sat in on the capital improvement and city development meetings this year for the first time and was a tremendous addition. She says she learned a lot because this is all new to her, and so she was calling department heads in Gary Region before the meetings began. And she came to the meetings with contributory knowledge so that we were able to tell Derek from Parks and Forestry that the roofs at the zoo should be done out of the revolving account if the council would just increase the expenditure level high enough so that those roofs could be done in a year. Because there's $1.2 million in the revolving account. We got 2 roofs leaking in the zoo. So that's just an example of the value of having Deborah Gould on our side. And I sincerely expect her to be invited next year. I hope she can make it. And I think that she's going to become an ex officio member of the Capital Improvements Committee. And that concludes our comments.
Thank you, Council Conti. Council Blair.
Just a couple kudos. I've been here, I don't know if it's as long as her or not, pretty close, huh? Kay, did we come on? Was she here then?
She was here, but not in the capacity of auditor at first.
We are so fortunate to have that lady in that office. At this point in time, I don't think the city could run without her. So,
Hopefully now especially.
I'm looking forward to the vote next week to confirm her appointment.
Thank you, Council Blair. Council Delicio.
Thank you, and I fully understand that usually the new business is just voting whether or not to put it to a committee, but I think that Deb kind of supersedes all that, and these kudos, I guarantee you will hear again and again for Deb. Councilor Conti, you spot on, because she brought that same to the budget the last 2 years as well, and I think that her understanding of all of the city's finances, but the other thing that she does real well that she doesn't get nearly enough credit for is her oversight of every revolving fund, every transfer, every budget, every PO. So, from my vantage point, I will vote yes to this as long as Deb will have us.
Thank you, Councilor Delicio. This requires a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That,
I'm gonna
we have no,
refer that to,
oh, I'm referring that, thank you very much. I've been doing so well. I'm gonna refer that to the Personnel and Human Service Committee as well. Thank you. We have no further business this evening.
Second.
Yes, I'm gonna entertain a motion to adjourn.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Done.
You said that was nice.
Yeah.
I hope you don't mind my laughing.
Nervous when I saw
I didn't
those
want
people in the
people-
audience. I was like, Julie, what's gonna happen now? I knew they were.